you're not at that seat by 7 o'clock.
Whoops, wrong way.
Good evening and welcome to the September 4th, 2019 Ashland Select Board meeting. This meeting is being broadcast live and being recorded by the good folks at WACA-TV. Is there anyone in attendance who may be taping this meeting? If not, we'll proceed with the Pledge of Allegiance, and Chief Alfano, if you don't mind leading us in the pledge.
Turn the rest of the lights on too.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Shannon gonna come in the booth here today.
There we go. It was imbalanced.
So it seems like it's been a month since we met.
It has been.
Has it? Okay, not a bad thing. So we start off tonight with citizens' participation. We do have a public hearing at 7:20, so anything that might be occurring, we may defer, but we'll open it up right now for citizen participation. And Mr. DeSoni, good evening.
After a month, you still know my name, you're not laughing. Thank you. Good evening.
Good
How's
evening.
everybody so far this fine summer, almost fall day now?
It's early.
Very good.
It's early.
Thank you. Everything around me, around the house, everything is doing good. I'm busy with the town, busy economically, zoning out all the things I'm trying to do. There's a couple of things on the agenda that's about zoning, not zoning, but economic with Beth Reynolds on. And I want to ask through the chairman, town manager, to use your questions. So it's going to be a habit now.
Okay.
Yes or no email?
Yes.
3 of them so far?
No.
Just the one?
2.
2. See, technology can be wonderful.
It can be.
And have you read into them, and how did it come out to you?
Well, I think they're similar to some of the things that we've talked about before, and I would just encourage you to continue down that path. I think you're getting there.
Thank you. And understanding that this town needs a side shot to get economics. There's a lot more in this town than there is, but, and already censoring at the beach. And I'm just making sure that everybody's good, and I've gone through the planning board, I've gone through the sustainability gave me answers. He might put me on his agenda to talk about them. And I know that Route 126 is starting to take a little bit more better glow. And for that, I'd like to ask Member Greaves, Vice Chair Greaves, if you can say anything about that, because I'm pursuing 126 as a zoning bylaw, economic titles of getting better jobs down there. Has there been anything been said about that?
Not specifically about zoning. We haven't, there was a meeting by the Pond Street Working Group about a month ago that I wasn't able to attend because I had another meeting. I don't know that any new zoning or change zoning is being looked at right now for Route 126. We've been focusing on working with the state and the federal government on the funding.
And has the state and federal government funding been looking at profitable professional jobs instead of nonprofits?
That's not something that they're gonna be looking at. The street design does not look at the jobs that are there. That's the town's job.
Okay, and that's through the Beth Reynolds and her
Through our economic development programs,
yeah.
correct?
Okay, so I might hear something when it comes up. I may not.
Yeah.
But yes, it seems like it's getting some tractions a little bit, but I know that it's not always going to be. And to the chairman, to newest member Brandy, You did a good job on Around the Clock with Yolanda. Saw the interview.
Thank you.
Yolanda's a
Left
good
out?
interviewer.
And how well of a good cook are you?
So I am a good cook, but I tried to.
Humble.
I was going to tell Joe this, but Joe just left. So I had an Italian meal this weekend that I tried to make fresh pasta and I failed. So you know, it's a life lesson for my son. Even the best plans go awry.
Was it in-home mistake? No 911 needed, right?
No 911, but a house full of guests that were hungry.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay, so that's about it, and let's hope the rest of the summer goes well and everybody stays happy and zone up and get professional businesses in this town. Thank you.
Very good. Thanks,
Mark.
Mark. Okay, anyone else for citizens' participation this evening? Seeing none, we'll proceed to our next our scheduled appearance. Beth Reynolds is going to speak on the Economic Development Incentive Program and businesses that are taking advantage of the program currently.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
So the Business Incentive Program has been running now for a few months, and we've had a lot of interested parties. We have had applications from 4 different businesses, one that is new to town, that is coming into town, as well as 3 that are here as already currently looking to expand, and 1 taking advantage of the sign and facade improvement program. So you'll see the letter that we submitted, the Economic Development Advisory Group. They met, they reviewed the applications. All of these applicants do fit the criteria that you have put forward in the rules and regs. And so they are basically, the next step was to bring this to the town manager. So Michael and I have had a conversation about this, and now we are bringing it to you for a vote to move forward.
Very good. So just explain, since you're here.
Sure.
Speak a little bit about the businesses and who they are and what's being proposed for this.
The ones applying? Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'll start with the largest one. Dulce de Leche is opening a new location at 200 Homer Ave. I believe they just got their building permits and their occupancy permits done. They will be opening their retail space in either the end of the month, this month, or the beginning of October. So they're really getting ready to go. They're manufacturing their products, which include a laundry list that they're going to be doing specialty cakes and gelatos and coffee and pre-made, ready to eat. They're really focused on servicing the 400 employees that actually are in there daily in that building in 200 Homer Ave, plus the gym.
Hold on a second.
Sure.
There are 400 employees in that building right now?
At least. On Process is in there, and they have approximately 200. They used to have more, but and then there's some biotech companies in that building, Dr. Green's. So there'll be some great traffic for them. I think they're going to be a great business, a great community partner as well. They already are in the farmers market and what they do there, and they've done events at the corner spot, so they really are. They're great. So it's nice to support them. It's great that they've taken advantage of this. This incentive was just helped them to, want to choose Ashland, to know that we're business friendly. So they've applied for the amenities financing program, which includes equipment. So they have invested $900,000 so far into their rehab of that space. They have put in a lot of personal investment to this. It is beautiful. And so they have applied for the equipment program as well as the rental equipment, because they are just leasing that space. So in total, $40,000. They're taking advantage of the entire program. Nice. Wine Empire is looking to do a new sign. So they are taking advantage of the sign and facade improvement program, where we reimburse up to half. So it will be a sign out in the front of the building. This program was created to really enhance the business facades in town. And then there's 2 businesses that are looking to expand here, Julie Zebreads and Ryan Insurance, and they are looking for the interest-free loan program, where they are taking out a loan to grow their business, to increase their amount of employees, to take it to the next step, and this would help them, this loan would help them do that.
That's great. Any questions or discussion? You know, for personally, you know, it's great to see both Julie Z and Dolce taking advantage of this program. Having started at the farmer's market, it's one of 3 of our original vendors that have invested in Ashland. So it's a terrific testimony that these folks are inspired enough to and feel there's a sufficient business here to support their businesses. So that's great.
You will be seeing me a little bit more too, because I do have, I think 5 tentatively working on theirs as we speak. So people are taking advantage of this, which is wonderful.
That's fantastic. So any questions for Beth or any comments, Michael?
Yeah, so Beth, so I think we're investing like a little over 41,000 that we know of right now. That doesn't include the loans, the subsidized loans, but how much of a private investment is that leveraging? So, I mean, Dolce de Leche was pretty big.
Right. I mean, you're over $1 million.
So over $1 million of private investment coming into town,
Yeah.
utilizing, 40, probably after the loans are done, $50,000. It's not a bad deal.
Yeah.
Plus, we're also growing our the employee base too. So they're adding on employees. All of these businesses, with growth comes more jobs, and that's something that I really, work hard to do. We want people to work and live here, so it's a great opportunity.
That's great.
Very
Good.
nice.
Any comments or questions?
I have just couple quick questions. So Julie Z's and Ryan Insurance that are applying for the loans, have they already gotten pre-approved from Needham Bank? I know we haven't voted on it yet, but I assume they've already kind of been working with them to see.
One
if they
has been pre-approved and one
Okay.
is in the process.
Okay, I just wasn't sure what kind
Mhm.
of, where that, falls in the,
Right. We're still working out those, the way that all
Yeah.
processes too, but
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
they're in the process.
okay. I love this program. I think it's very progressive. I think it encourages businesses to come to Ashland. I think it's pretty inventive, so.
I have already spoken with 2 new businesses that are looking to move to Ashland, and this was a great tool to use.
Yeah.
Really good tool. They were
Great.
surprised to see it.
And then just one other quick comment, just, as we kind of move forward with 126, I think that this will play a really big part in the redevelopment of 126, because existing businesses that are there can really take advantage of the sign and facade program and really kind of improve their current businesses or new businesses that are coming into town. So I think I think it'll be good. So,
Good.
thank you.
I just had, Beth or Mike, you talked in the past about, we talked in the past about property tax revenue as a benchmark. So are we keeping track of this and what the expected revenues are from these businesses, and as part of your economic development plan? That was always one of the, so maybe you could incorporate some of that information into your,
So part of
As we
that
go through
is
this.
included in that private investment number that we're talking about. So that, that's stuff that goes onto the personal property tax rolls, not necessarily the real estate tax rolls. But it is something that we do keep track of, is, the increase in commercial value.
Right.
Vis-a-vis
and that was
the
exactly,
increase
when
in
we started this
residential.
a few years ago, when we hired Beth and talked about the economic development plan, that's one of our benchmarks. And so I think it'd be good to incorporate that information, because that's really one of the main priorities here,
Right.
right? So,
I think it's important too to know that the local meals taxes, we do track that as well,
Yeah.
quarterly.
okay, good, that's
So
another good
those
one.
do increase,
Sure.
especially with the restaurants.
Yes, good point, and also job creation. So, somebody like Dolce is that's gonna be their production facility. He's gonna be hiring folks
It's
as well.
10 to 20 jobs, right? Was that 10 to
Yes,
20?
eventually. When
Yeah.
they're at max, I believe they wanted, they're looking at 25
Right.
total. Yeah, 20, yeah.
Pretty.
Super. Good.
That's good.
All right, so we need to act on these recommendations. Do we need to make the Ryan subject to the approval? Is that the one that is in process?
Yes.
So do we need to make that subject to the,
You can go ahead and approve it, and it's working its way through the
Okay.
Needham Bank
All right.
process as well.
okay, so if there's no other comments, entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the 4 economic development programs that have been presented to us and pre-approved by the Economic Development Advisory Group.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? If none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and all those opposed, so that's 5-0, so job well done.
Thank you. Thanks.
Keep up the good work, kiddo.
Yes,
Thanks,
thank you,
Beth.
Okay, next on our agenda, we're bumping up to our public hearing, so let's do something that's gonna be fairly quick, and I would suggest maybe the consent agenda, if we can throw that up, we can get through that. Love the consent agendas.
Especially when they include money coming to the town.
Yeah, it's very
Those
nice.
are-
Yeah,
It's
yep,
always
and
nice.
very good. So it's, after not having met for a month, it's amazing how many things do add up. So, this is our consent agenda for the evening. I'll take a motion to move the consent agenda forward.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented, and thanks to all those who have written and gotten us the grants that are in this.
I'll second that.
So a motion second. Any comments, discussion? If none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Well, I'm all set.
Okay, good. And all those opposed? Hearing none, so that's 5-0. Consent agenda moves forward. Okay. So let's quickly, I know there's some folks here in the audience regarding the Eversource project. So let's jump down to old new business for the Eversource status of the declaratory judgment proceedings. So, Michael, if you want to speak to that
Sure.
briefly?
So thank you, Mr. Chair. So for those of you that were at the Concom meeting, this is going to be old news, but so the town of Ashland, through its select board, has filed for what's known as declaratory judgment in land court. And the complaint is really, it's related to the easement that Eversource is utilizing as part of their plan to replace their gas pipeline throughout the town of Ashland. The easement language, there's a dispute as to whether or not the easement language allows only one pipe or more than one pipe. It's been a source of confusion at the Energy Facility Siting Board hearing. It's been a source of confusion at Conservation Commission hearings. And so we felt that it was actually in everybody's best interest, including Eversource, to seek a declaratory judgment on this and see, basically get a judge's ruling as to what is allowed.
Right. So, timeline on this, we, at this point, we don't know.
So we
Any-
will we're anticipating in a couple of weeks having a conference to, set out the schedule for the briefs and the hearings and all of that stuff.
Yeah. Does legal counsel predict or speculate on length of time involved?
Probably a few months.
A few months,
Oh,
okay.
not far.
All right. So we have, it's one of 3 of the, I think, outstanding issues on the, at least the Eversource pipeline project. One is which, this, seeking a declaratory judgment. The second, of course, is the Energy Siting Board and their process. And then our Conservation Commission as well. So those are all in process and waiting for some sort of adjudication.
And do we think EFSB is going to wait for this declaratory judgment, or do we have any idea?
They have not given us, any indication one way or another.
Yeah.
I would think it would be, again, in everybody's best interest to figure out exactly what is allowed before you start going through the permitting process, whether it's at the state level with the EFSB or the Conservation Commission. Obviously, if you can't put, Eversource's, plan is to actually leave the original pipe in place. If they cannot do that, Obviously, it changes their whole plan from a cost impact standpoint, and then also from a wetland and environmental impact standpoint, and just not to mention kind of wreaking havoc on the town's infrastructure, both personnel-wise and physically.
Sure, okay. All right, we are at our public hearing time. I need to read a legal notice. Notice is hereby given that the Select Board will conduct a hearing for the purpose of NSTAR Electric Company, DBA Eversource Energy, and Verizon New England, Inc. for installing one new pole and an anchor pole number 44/60A West Union Street, Ashland. A public hearing will be held regarding this at the Ashland Town Hall, Ashland, Mass. On Wednesday, September 4, 2019 at 7:20 p.m. Persons wishing to be heard on this matter are invited to attend the public hearing at the date and time noted above. Interested parties who are unable to attend the hearing may submit written comments to the Select Board's office, Town Hall 101 Main Street, Ashland, Mass. 01721, or by emailing Susan Roby at sroby@ashlandmass.com, signed Steve Mitchell, Select Board. So welcome, if you might introduce yourself.
Sure.
And
I'm Christine Cosby, Eversource Energy, and we're requesting permission to install a new pole, pole 44/60A, the anchor guide. And the purpose of the pole would be to provide new service for the transit apartments. It would be the backup feed through the old MBTA access road.
Okay, so we're currently, we're looking at a site map here. So currently, where is the pole, and is it being moved across the street?
It's a new pole.
It's a brand-new
It's a
pole,
brand
and
new
the
pole.
anchor pole is,
The anchor will be on the pole.
okay, got it. And this is supporting what now?
The
Supporting
apartments up at the MBTA station,
Sears.
transit apartments.
Cirrus Apartments, okay, got it. Okay. Any questions?
We got. No, I don't know.
No,
I
no
just find it
questions?
odd
No?
that I guess one question is, it's supporting the apartments that are up at the top of the MBTA access road, but it's across the street
Yeah,
on
the-
West
the-
Union.
Yeah, the pole would be placed in the street, and then we'd run an overhead wire across the street to another pole on private property.
I
And then
see.
underground at that point, up the access road. The actual
Oh,
conduit,
okay.
the conduit's already there, in the road, we would just connect it to where they dead-ended it.
Okay,
Okay,
that makes sense.
got it.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else from the board? Mr. Duca, you have a technical
Yes, I met with,
explanation? If you would come, identify yourself, please, and,
I met with Eversource a few dozen times. Issue is, I never got the final plan for their two poles, not one, two. So I could sign off that said we're in a good spot. We signed off on the one that's in the corner, but not the ones across the street in front of Hickey's development. Because the town has equipment in the ground across the street from the pole that's gonna span over to the second pole. I haven't seen it, so wanna see the final plan before I'm gonna give an okay, because,
Okay.
and I haven't seen it.
all right, I'm a little confused. Just go through that again, Michael?
Town has equipment, traffic light equipment.
Okay, and where's that located?
On the corner, there's the box on the corner.
Yeah,
And then across the street, we have conduit that actually runs the underground system,
okay,
all right? There's two poles, one across the street, and it's gonna go across, and hopefully, where I met with one of the engineers, where they decided to put the pole, but I haven't had a confirmation of where. They were supposed to just email me a set of plans, and that never happened.
okay.
Across the street, we have conduit in front of Hickey's Project, which is a house across the street. We have conduit over there, and they still haven't given me exactly where they're gonna put the
Okay.
pole.
So you need a set of plans to
If
approve,
I
a
look
final
at
set
the
of
plans
appra-
right now, I mean, to see exactly, because what we talked about and what I haven't seen.
Well, we don't have to do that right here and now. What we can do is we can vote and make it conditioned by the review and the sign-off,
Mike Duca's approval,
right?
so.
From,
Oh.
from, from the town of Ashland, so
And
we
then
can
I
do
don't
it that
know
way.
if have they been cleared with, DigSafe, because we just found out that AT&T, which one comes down the, sorry, I have to, my technical guy gentleman over there, Skip. What are you looking for? The other set of lines that we found that come down from the high school.
Both Verizon and AT&T are located in the sidewalk.
In the sidewalk, so I just found that out
Okay.
actually
All
not
right.
too long ago, and
Okay, so whatever we do, we'll make it conditional on a review
I have to
and a
go out and
sign-off.
I mean, the last time I was
Okay.
out there with them was in January.
Okay, great,
So,
thanks, thank you.
all right.
Yep, thank you. So, any discussion, any questions for Eversource?
The only concern that I would have is if we have equipment and underground equipment of other companies that are there, I would assume that a dig-safe permit would be necessary at this point in time before anything. And do we have that? Do we have a permit in hand from Eversource?
That
Yeah, and add it to that.
We normally do call it DigSafe. We do DigSafe all of our work, so is that what you're looking for, is that to do a DigSafe before?
Well, yeah, especially if there's equipment that could be damaged if we're digging and we don't know what's under the ground.
Okay.
I would be very concerned about that.
Yeah, so it sounds like the
Condition,
two issues that we're concerned with is a final plan
Mhm.
that the town can review and sign off on, and then verification that DigSafe has been contracted to review the
Something,
equipment,
yep, yep.
right?
And the location.
Okay?
Yep.
Anything else that, all right, so we'll entertain a motion on this request. Oh, sorry. Need to close the hearing, take a motion to close it.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So hearing is closed. Any other discussion? Then I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we give approval to request for the new pole install and anchor pole 44 and 60A located on West Union Street with review and sign off by Mike Duca for the town of Ashland and a dig-safe permit in hand.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion, a second. Any other discussion? If none, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? And that's 5-0, so thank you. So
Thank you.
we'll look forward to
Yes,
receiving
I'll
that
be in touch.
information.
Before she goes, we still have 2 minutes before our 7:30. Where are we at with all the double poles in town? And, Oak Street has a ton of them. A couple of other streets have a ton of them. I know there was concern at one point where it was our old fire line that was on some of them. I know that's been pulled from a lot of them. So at some point, I can tell by your face that you probably don't have an update for us.
I don't, but I will
think-
get one.
Yeah, because I'm concerned with all the ones on Oak Street in particular. There's a lot of them, and that concerns me. There's a couple on Prospect Street that concern me. With the winter coming, some of these lines are at risk. So if we could get an update, House
I
Street.
will, I'll get a updated double poll report and get back to you.
Great, appreciate that.
Thank you.
Beat you to it.
I know you did. That's okay.
All set.
Okay, great.
Good.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
All right, our next agenda item is a request for one-day license for the Corner Spot, multiple one-day licenses for the Corner Spot from Flying Dreams, October 10th through October 12th, from 5 PM to 10 PM. So it looks like
Friday and Saturday.
Beth is back at the podium, and we have Flying Dreams with us.
That's right. Hello.
So I'm excited to introduce you to Joe tonight. He's the owner of Flying Dreams Brewery. They are located again out of Marlboro. We're drawing from Marlboro. We are requesting to have another beer garden for 3 days, the weekend of October 10th. And Joe can kind of tell you a little bit about Flying Dreams. We'll do the same setup as we always have. He'll be inside the shed. We will cordon off the area just to remind people to keep it in the spot. And we will continue to have music and food to kind of go with the beer garden. So I'll let Joe talk.
Welcome.
So yes, as Beth said, I'm Joe Langevin, the sales manager at Flying Dreams. We're just hoping to come down to Ashland. You know, we've seen the success that other breweries have had at the Corner Spot. We think it's a wonderful opportunity for us to get out into the community. We are a small family-owned business that's actively trying to expand our distribution and our reach. And we hope that with your help, we can actually get out here and do that ourselves and serve up some delicious beer to the community. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Any questions for Joe?
I do.
Go
Sorry.
right ahead.
You know I'm gonna ask him. I know that this area is an area that promotes businesses coming to town on a regular basis and trying to entice new businesses to stay in town. Do you have any intentions of, down the road, seeing yourself here as a new business in town, where you'll be competing with other businesses that already have brick and mortar buildings, you know, in town that are paying taxes, or is this just a hit and run deal?
Well, I couldn't quite speak on that. That would be better answered by the owner of Flying Dreams, Dave Richardson. However, I can say at this particular point in time, we have no intention of setting up a brick and mortar permanent location here in Ashland, as we have just opened our tap room in Marlboro on Main Street back in December. We've got our hands full with that and our hands full with expanding our distribution. So at this particular moment in time, the only thing we would be looking to do is to see if any of your local bars, restaurants, and liquor stores would be interested in carrying our product to sell in the already existing stores.
So you're a manufacturer, more say, to the businesses that are currently here in town, and hopefully you can get them to come to try your product at the location.
Correct.
Okay. I wonder if there's another venue that would be more appropriate for that to happen, where vendors like yourselves can have local businesses that do liquor licenses or have their liquor licenses come and sample your product and do something of that nature. Excuse me for a second. Really?
Inside jokes.
Inside joke. I'm just curious, that's all, because I know what the intent and purpose was for the Corner Spot, and it bothers me, and they know you're gonna, it has nothing to do with the fact that I don't wanna see it happen, but we have many businesses in town that are paying taxes and looking for support within our community and through the businesses here in town to support them. And we'd love to have your product come in town in that way. Maybe there's another venue or a way that you can provide your product to those businesses so they can do a taste testing type of deal. I know that we have a company in town that does taste testing at some point, and I don't know if that's another way we can get businesses like these folks to do something like that nature. So that way the folks that are here, that have permanent businesses in town and are supporting our community in that, other than a one-day liquor license. So that's where I stand with that. It's not that I don't wish you ill fortune in any way, shape, or form, but I have to think about those folks that are here supporting our town on a yearly basis,
So,
365 days a year.
Joe, if I can just say something to that, because I think you bring up a really good point, and I've had this conversation with a lot of the businesses in town, right? So we're having events at the Corner Spot, and I'm bringing in food trucks, and we're bringing in music, and so this is not the first time I've heard this, but here's how I sort of see this. That the Corner Spot was built to make people want to come downtown, to have a reason to come downtown. And since they now do, I mean, the farmers market is proof of this as well. You see it on a Saturday morning. People come downtown and then they stick around and they go to Talby's and pick up flowers, or I'm sorry, blush bouquets now, they've renamed it. So they go there and pick up flowers, and they stop by the library, and they go to Sunnyside and grab a cup of coffee. And then they walk through the farmer's market. Or the same thing with the Corner Spot. Nick's Pizza has seen a huge increase in sales because we're bringing 200 people down to them. And then they go to the bagel table for a cup of coffee because they don't want a beer. And so it's a reason for people to come down, and in turn is now supporting all of our downtown businesses. So the way that I look at it isn't as it's pulling from them, it's just giving them more visibility and more traffic, and it's another reason to kind of come down and support them.
I understand your point, and we could discuss this for hours. Again, you mentioned at least 3 businesses that are here on a daily basis that draw people within the community. A weekly event such as the farmer's market that draws people. The library's here all the time. Erica's is here all the time. Johnstone's is here all the time, just to mention a few restaurants in the local downtown area. Z Breads are here. The bagel table, they're here. They're doing what they need to do, and those are drawing people already. They're continually drawing people, and I think that's great. And thanks to you, they're going to continue doing that. I just have a concern that it's a hit and run for one day, and I'd just like to see if there could be another venue for people like these folks to show their product and show their wares to the businesses that they're trying to gain interest in and have them buy their product. Because right now, the citizens in Ashland can't go to them and buy it off their shelves. They don't have a place. I mean, it's a brewery there, unless you can sell their product, at their place in Marlboro.
And they do.
And I don't know, so that's why I'm
yeah,
asking.
yeah.
So if they do that, that's
It's the
great.
same thing as La Choux, same.
Yeah, well,
it's just the
I
same.
understand it. but
We're
I
just
kept my mouth
providing a
shut twice
service
now,
to our
and I'm not
residents
gonna-
that have asked
Yeah.
for
We
it
can-
in our
we-
surveys
We
that
could
we've
talk
done,
about
so.
this for hours, because I think,
No, I know.
yeah, and I think you bring up a valid point, Joe. I do, I'll be honest, I'm a beer lover, so my question was gonna be, what style of beers do you provide? But I'm gonna defer to my colleague here.
So, Joe, I think you bring up a good point, and I feel like it's the end of the season for the Corner Spot, and I think that maybe between now and when they start planning for next season, we need to have a discussion about what we see going on at the Corner Spot, so that we're, this gentleman came, he has seen success at the Corner Spot, we've seen success with breweries, so that's why he's here. If we as a board wanna review what's happening at the Corner Spot, I think that should be something we should look at maybe for next season. But to Beth's point, I mean, because they're not serving food, you might go there for a beer and then go to Nick's for food, or go to Erica's for dinner, or go to, so I think it certainly has changed from the original intent of the Corner Spot, but I think it is still bringing people into downtown Ashland. So I think, for me, I would approve this, but it might be good for us as a board to work with Beth and her Corner Spot committee to say, okay, is this really what we want to continue doing in the next seasons? That would be my recommendation.
So I would suggest that, beer gardens obviously are very popular, and I think this is, part of that trend, regardless of whether a company is interested in locating to Ashland. And I'm not asking you this question, I just, it seems like at some point we're getting oversaturated with breweries and tap rooms and so on. I assume at some point we're gonna hit that tipping point, but that's another discussion. So, Rob?
Yeah, I just wanted to, and I'm in favor of this, and I think, one thing I wanted to add about all this discussion about the Corner Spot and what it's doing, what it's doing, it comes back to the benchmarking and our goals, and how is this feeding into the larger goals, and one of the big ones was, property tax revenue, and what are we doing, and what's the percentage of commercial? So I think, you can talk theoretically or have opinions about but we need some solid information. That's why I think it's important to continue with that information. That's the kind of information we could use when we're discussing this.
Yeah,
So,
good point.
anyway.
Michael, you had a comment?
Yeah, it actually dovetails with what Rob was saying, is that, maybe something that we can do, because I do think Beth has a really good point. Corner Spot acts as a draw, and when people come downtown, they go frequent other businesses, but how can you quantify that?
Yeah.
And I know other communities can do like a bracelet program, where if you're going to the beer garden, you get a bracelet and you're able to go to different businesses and you get like a discount or something like that. Or, there's even sometimes surveys at a beer garden.
I think you could probably poll a restaurant, use Stone's as an example, or Nick's, a meals tax when there's an event at the, what do they derive from the meals tax on that particular Thursday or Friday when, the beer garden was there, or whatever. So there's ways to
Yeah.
quantify it.
But Rob's overall point that, you know, to quantitatively
Right.
capture that, the data is important.
And I would also think, in the future, when there's actually a beer garden in the parking lot there, we may wanna look differently at how we're using the corner spot, because they won't need the draw of a beer garden at the corner spot, because there'll be a restaurant right there, so.
Yeah.
But again, I think that's future discussion and.
Right, so we're not here to discuss the corner spot future, but to approve a
I do have
request here, so.
I do have a quick question, a logistical question, just because I'm looking at the dates and the times in this triple E thing. So I know that the dates that,
Really hoping for a hard frost on
Right.
October 1st.
okay, there we go. All right, I'm right there with you.
Fingers crossed.
So I just didn't know if there was a.
It is definitely something we're gonna
Yeah.
have to.
Yeah. So, and I also know, you know, we've been talking about breweries and beer gardens, but this year at the corner spot, we've had less breweries pop up than we have, like, say, last year, correct?
Just one
Just one, so,
so far.
yep. So it seems like we talk a lot about them, but this year particularly, we don't have a lot of breweries
Right.
that are at corner spots. so.
Although fall is very popular for me.
It is, it's Oktoberfest and all that, so.
Okay, any other questions for Joe?
No.
If not,
And I just want to quantify my comments. It's not that I'm against what you're trying to do here. Please understand that. It's just, there was something that's always been echoing in my mind, because there's nothing in there anyway. But, when it was first presented to us, this was a way to bring businesses into town. And that just sticks with me all the time. And I hoped that that's what we were trying to do. In some cases it has been, in other cases it's just a promotional event to help somebody move along their business. And I get that, I understand that, and I don't wish you any ill in any way, shape, or form. I just wanna let you know that.
good. Thanks, Joe. So I'll entertain a motion at this point.
To close the hearing?
This is not a hearing. This
Oh,
is a
it's just
request.
one request, okay.
Yes.
I move that we approve the request for 3 one-day liquor licenses for Flying Dreams for October 10th, 11th, and 12th, from 5 PM to 10 PM, pending a nice hard frost.
And with that, if there isn't a nice hard frost, we'll leave it to them to make their decision
Yeah.
on shutting down.
Well,
Yeah.
We'll
Oh,
work
have
with
to
our
give
Board
them
of
a-
Health,
Work it
yeah.
out, okay, all right.
I'll second that.
Okay, a motion and second. Any other comments? If none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? And that passes 5-0.
So I think now you need to ask your question.
So quickly, because we've got a long agenda. So your beer styles, what do you provide?
We provide Belgian Saisons, Belgian IPAs, American IPAs, New England IPAs, stouts, porters. We have a German double bock. We also do a kettle sour series, so we provide some fruited sour beers. We also will have a delicious Pilsner that time of year, and we will also be coming out with our Oktoberfest lager at that time as well. So overall, we make at least 20 different styles of beer, covering a wide variety of different flavors. And we like to say that we brew a little bit of something for everyone.
Very nice.
Very
We'll
nice.
see you in October.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next on our agenda is a public safety building funding plan presentation. I just want to acknowledge all of the public safety personnel here in the audience. Greetings, thank you for being here tonight and supporting our work with getting our community a new public safety building. So I'll turn this over to Mr. Herbert.
All right. Thank you very much, and thank you, everybody, for being here. We really appreciate the support. Also want to acknowledge Dennis Giambetti, who's here from Senator Spilka's office. Appreciate his support and the senator's support as well. Just thought I would give you a general update on the public safety building project, where we are. Real quickly, for those of you that have been following along, we went through the process of procuring and hiring what's known as an owner's project manager. That is the project manager is required under Mass General laws, so we have to bring that person or that company on board. We actually selected Vertex Engineering, who just recently completed the Southborough Public Safety Building. So they're on board. We also went through the process of procuring and hiring the architect and engineer and HKT Architects. If you remember, HKT actually did the feasibility study of the land, and so we have brought them on to do the architectural and engineering work, and their team as well, which consists of a number of sub-consultants. We have, those of you that remember, we did have a piece of property from the Fafford Corporation be gifted to the town of Ashland for the purposes of having a public safety building. We're going through the process of delineating that, carving that out through the land court process, and then we also anticipate flagging the wetlands, reflagging the wetlands, I should say, and submitting to the Conservation Commission what's known as an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation. So basically getting the Conservation Commission looking at the wetland boundaries, they can approve that, and then we have something to work from. But I think we all know what we want to talk about tonight, which is how are we going to fund and build this thing? Unless you have been hiding under a rock over the last month or so, you realize that we've run into some challenges related to the funding vis-a-vis what we had anticipated when we brought this, the design and engineering to the town in the fall. And so just to try to go over briefly what some of these are. First is the cost of construction has escalated due to the market conditions and federal policy decisions. So that's really kind of a wonky way of saying tariffs. This year alone, so the cost of the building has gone from $25 million all the way up to $29 million. And we anticipate that those costs to continue to increase at 8% a year. Actually, just recently, HKT's professional cost estimator said that they're thinking it's just going to be all over the map. It's going to be really, really hard to determine what those costs are going to be. I do want to say that $29 million does include things like the site work, the redesign of the intersection. Those of you that are really familiar with that intersection that goes up to the high school, especially the red light, you know, that's, it includes the re-engineering of that and also all of the contingencies associated with building the project. We do have decreased confidence in the timely release of the $25 million in bond bill funding that was included in the legislative authorization last year. So the governor in June of 2019 presented his 5-year capital plan. Unfortunately, the Ashland Public Safety Building was not a part of that. It was not a part of it for this coming year. It was not a part of it for the additional 4 years moving beyond. Now that is a rolling capital plan, but I think it's important to plan for what we know is going to happen and what we have a good confidence of happening. And I just don't have as much confidence in that bond bill being released in a timely manner the way we were before. And so we're kind of in this conundrum because even if we do wait for the bond bill funding, let's just say we take a chance and we want to wait for that $25 million to be released in 5 or 6 years. Given the escalating costs each year, we could be in a situation where we actually might have to go back to the taxpayers for more than what we would actually have to go to them now to get the building built. I hope that came across clearly. But so it's a somewhat unique situation, a challenging situation. And when we got this news over the summer, I don't want to say we debated whether or not to put it out there because I think we all knew that the right thing to do was to get it out there as quickly as possible. But one of the things that I was hesitant about is I didn't have an answer. I didn't have a plan to how to accommodate this. And I knew that we were going to get all these questions. What are you going to do? What's it going to cost? What's it going to cost me as a taxpayer? We didn't have those answers. So we have been working hard over the last 6 weeks to come up with that funding plan and something that I want to present to you tonight and hopefully get the board's support. And if that's the case, the board does support it, we'll be able to move forward into budget season with this plan in mind and craft a budget accordingly. I think one of the best ways to think about things like this is just what are our goals? What are we trying to accomplish? So, you know, obviously building the building, but we want to design a funding plan that is only using resources that are under the town of Ashland's control. So we're not going to look at any state funding as a percentage of, we're not gonna count on any state funding to build this building. We're gonna try to do this entirely within our budget and our resources. Second is to minimize the impact on the tax rate and thus the overall cost to the homeowner. I mean, let's be honest, if we have a debt exclusion, that is going to be an increase in taxes. How can we minimize the impact to the taxpayers on that? And then also, another thing that we have to think about is we're not just talking about building one building here in Ashland over the next few years. We're talking about also a new school, a new, or renovated, I should say, Mendez School. So we've got to build a funding plan that also takes into account the fact that we need to fund that in the future and still keep that affordable for Ashland taxpayers. And then the final thing that I think it's easy to get penny wise and pound foolish when you get into these situations and you start cutting things. And I want to reiterate, this building is not a Taj Mahal. It is not going to be like the quintessential or the paragon of public safety buildings in Metro Western Massachusetts. But we do want to build something that is good for 30, 40, 50 years. We don't want to be in the same situation like we are now, where we open up a building like the police station and 2, 3 years later, we're in a situation where we've already outgrown it. So again, we got to be smart. We can't be penny wise and pound foolish. So once we start looking at affordability, I think the best way to look at this is the average single-family tax bill. And hopefully this comes through and it's not too blurry. By the way, it's been a long time since I've been able to play with spreadsheets and all this stuff, so this has been kind of fun. Well, I don't know if I call it fun, but it's been a unique exercise. So this is the average single-family tax bill for 2019. Now, it doesn't include things like condos. This is the average single-family home. So it's a little bit higher than what Ashland's home average is. But you'll see we're fourth from the bottom of these communities, and these are the communities that consist of the Metro West Economic Research Center region. Right now, our tax bill is at $7,300, almost $7,400. You can see that is fourth from the bottom. We are behind Marlboro, Hudson, and Framingham. This orange line represents the average of all of these communities, so we are under the average. I want to point out, one of the things I want to really kind of reinforce is the fact that I know this is expensive. I'm not saying that $7,300 is not hard to come up with. I'm not saying that it's not a burden. I just think it's important when we're looking at affordability to start looking at things like apples to apples and where are we in the context of the region. So if you break that tax bill down a little bit, you can say, okay, a certain portion of this is going to be spent towards general government, a certain portion going towards health insurance, a certain portion going towards police and fire. And then also there's a certain portion of that tax bill that goes towards excluded debt projects. So projects that have been authorized to go above the Proposition 2.5 levy limit. And those projects right now include the town hall, the community center, the high school, the school roofs, the Mendez feasibility study, the library renovation, the Valentine property acquisition, and the public safety building design and engineering. And right now, those projects represent $375 on the average single-family tax bill. So kind of the goal, the concept here is to see if we can keep the tax bill, the debt excluded portion of the tax bill, below this $375 line. So residents will not necessarily see an increase in their taxes related to debt excluded projects. Everybody kind of following along so far? Okay. As you see, this, because we did a lot of these projects in the last 20 years, a lot of the debt is starting to fall off, specifically around 2024. One of the things we did in 2014 is we actually refinanced the bonds for the community center, the high school, town hall, and the library. And so actually we were able to shorten the term a little bit. So if we had not done that, we would be looking at that drop off more around 2025 or 2026. So it's an example of a good decision that we made a few years ago that's now paying benefits that we couldn't have anticipated at that time. Okay, so what happens if we take that $29 million and what if we did a debt exclusion for that whole amount? How would that impact that tax bill and that portion of the tax bill? And as you can see, it's pretty significant. It's, some would say shocking. So this is where we are in 2020. It would add about $230 to the average single-family tax bill. It bumps up that debt excluded portion of the tax bill all the way up to almost $600. So you're going from $375 all the way up to $600. And it really does not go below that $375 threshold again until 2025. You almost get to it at 2024, but you don't really get to it until 2025. And then you see you have very, very little capacity to pay for a new school without going above that $375 threshold. So it's gonna, I think it's gonna present a situation where, you know, potentially people can start pitting projects against each other. Something that we don't want to do. It's something that we worked hard to kind of get over the last few years, is that type of competition. So needless to say, I think this is a hard, it's going to be a hard sell and a non-starter, I think, from my perspective. So the question is how do you get these orange blocks down below this $375, right? And we're going to do this with two different ways. So we're going to find a way to, within our existing budget, within the existing tax levy, we're going to try to find a way to pay for a good chunk, if not half, of this building, again, inside the levy limit, and only ask for a debt exclusion for half of the debt service related costs. And then the second part of the goal is we're going to actually look at using debt structure and getting a little fancy with debt structure to, again, keep it under that $375 amount. So what is this structure, what do these savings look like? And this is a very rough cut, very high level. We don't have a lot of details, but I will run through them right now. So the projected annual debt service on a $29 million bond over 30 years using a pretty conservative interest rate, according to our bank, is going to be $1,520,000. So that's, to give you an idea, that's pretty much what our entire excluded debt budget is now. It's probably more like 0.6 or 70%, I would say. So what we can do is when we sell those bonds, we actually get a premium. Okay, what's known as a premium? People actually pay us for the privilege, I guess you could say, of borrowing money, almost like points on a mortgage, I guess you could say. I hate using mortgage analogies because it's not like a mortgage, but doing the best we can here. And so if we do that, that actually brings down the cost, the annual cost to $1,420,000. So you already saved $100,000 right there. Then we started looking at, okay, what kind of revenue sources do we have that we may not have looked at previously that we could enhance or raise and bring them more up to market level and surrounding communities levels. And the first thing we did is we looked at revising the ambulance fees. So one of the benefits of running our own ambulance service, besides providing really great service to our community, is we actually get revenue for those calls. And that's one of the reasons why it was really, really important to get enough staffing to go to 2 ambulances, being able to run 2 of those. So we're extremely low, Keith. We're almost like half of the next highest rate, which I think is Wayland. So looking at Keith, he's like, yeah. So we think we can raise about $200,000 by raising the fees, and then we're also accounting for a little bit of slippage. We understand that people aren't going to be, they won't pay if there's a higher rate. Another thing I really want to point out about this is this does not impact our elderly, because elderly that are on Medicaid, that is billed at a fixed rate regardless of what town you're in. So it's fixed. So and you can't raise that. So that is we're going to have no impact on our senior population with this. The other thing that we're going to do is we're going to look at restructuring some things within our general fund. Now, last year, town meeting was very generous in we really appreciate the fact that we decided to create a special revenue account for economic development being funded through the meals tax, so we carved that out. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna shift a little bit of the economic, or a little bit more of the economic development budget than what we had anticipated onto the meals tax, which will then free up money within the general fund that we can put towards the public safety building, paying inside the levy limit. Next is our pay-as-you-go capital diversion. And so pay-as-you-go, we typically budget every year $750,000 for capital. But when we get free cash at the end of the year, when things get closed out, a portion of that, and now it's a big portion of that, goes to capital projects. I think we're now around $1.5 million over the last couple of years. Practically, we're at the point where we have more projects going on than we have people to complete them. So this was almost a no-brainer once we started digging into them. We actually don't have the people to do all of the projects within the fiscal year that are actually authorized. So we're looking at taking $200,000 from that and putting it towards the public safety building. And so the last remaining item are police and fire department efficiencies of $200,000. We're not there yet, we're getting close, but you've got to think, I mean, even just closing down 91 Main Street, where we lease for what was the administrative offices, that's like $30,000 a year that we save once we go into a new building, and we could put that towards payment of the bonds associated with the new building. So, like I said, I think we're around 150 to 160. Feel confident that we're going to get up to that $200,000 number and not really impact services. This is going to impact our ability to weather recessions. I will say that. I think, though, we have a good enough stabilization fund balance. We have 10% to, I mean, that's what it's there for. When you get recessions, you go to the stabilization fund to help kind of make up that gap. So I feel comfortable doing this. So that brings the total amount that we need to raise through a debt exclusion to $720,000. So almost half. Okay, everybody following with me now? Seeing a lot of blank stares, hoping this comes through. So if we take that, and then if we start utilizing a modified debt structure where we start utilizing short-term debt to kind of bridge us to the period where a lot of the debt falls off from previously authorized projects, this is what it looks like. So we're able to keep it underneath that $375 threshold. That's what that black line represents. I forgot to label it. We'll only be able to do interest only in the first year. We will be able to do interest and a little bit of principal in the second year, and then in the third year we'll be able to pay a little bit more of the principal. And so that means the remainder of the bond needs to be amortized over a 27-year period, again, because the maximum we can borrow for is 30 years. And so that's what that looks like. It comes down to about $126 on the average single-family tax bill. So you add those onto what is currently on our existing debt schedule, that's what it looks like. And so we have, I think, pretty good capacity to build and pay for a new Mendez or renovated Mendez school. I'm not saying it's going to be $96 to the average tax bill. I'm not going to say it's $172, but it's definitely gives us a lot of room and I think a lot of flexibility. So that's the plan. That's the overall general plan. A couple of considerations that I want to just reiterate. First of all, I'm not counting any cost savings due to the antiquated buildings. I haven't factored any of that in. Those of you that have been in the buildings know how antiquated those facilities are, know how much we have to spend each year in facility repairs, and know how much it costs to heat those buildings, light those buildings, electrify those buildings. I've not factored any savings related to that into this. We're also going to continue to advocate for state funding. Again, we're not going to count on it, but we're going to advocate for it. That includes money of the bond bill. We're going to look at grants. We're going to look at other opportunities. And the Senator and Representative Lewis have, pledged their support in helping whatever way they can in us acquiring some of that additional funding. The other thing that I think sometimes gets lost is that vacating these properties present opportunities to repurpose those buildings and help revitalize downtown. Not just from a vibrancy standpoint, but you're also taking buildings that are not on the tax rolls, pay no taxes whatsoever, and actually put them back on the tax rolls. There's been a lot of interest by restaurateurs to open up in the fire station. Sorry, police guys, there's not that much interest for doing that with the police station. I know you understand. So Ryan's like, I don't know, Ryan might do it. But, you know, so you start thinking about property tax, you start talking about restaurants, you start talking about meals tax too. We were just talking about the meals tax. So, again, that is the overall plan. I kind of ran out of time before I could do like some nice final slide. I hope it made sense. I hope you're confident in it. I hope it accomplishes some of the goals that you're thinking of as board members and elected officials for the community. I hope it gives the people out there confidence in what we're trying to do, and that we can actually build this building and keep it affordable, and also keep us having some capacity for the Mendez School moving forward.
Well, thank you, Michael. Good presentation. Before I open it up to the board for any questions or comments, I do want to acknowledge, because I know you had help putting this together, so I want to acknowledge Assistant Town Manager Jen Ball and all the work that she's put into this, and also Chief Roby and Chief Alfano as well. I know they've worked hard to find those efficiencies as well in their department, so appreciate that.
Yeah, Jen never gets any credit, so.
Well, she's getting it tonight.
There we go.
So I'll open it up to the board for any questions or comments, and then this is, you know, I think we all consider this a highly important project for the community. I'll open it up to the audience if there's any comments or questions that they may have as well. So start with the board first.
If I may, Mr. Chair. Michael, thank you for the presentation. I think it's, I think it'll be well received by everybody out there. Fairly complex plan that you have, but it's a plan that I think would keep from the townspeople pitting one project against the other. Because that's the last thing we want to do. We don't want this to become an us versus them ballot question. It's either the schools or it's the building. It's going to be a combined project. Both schools, the schools and the public safety building together, and not one or the other. And I think with the plan that you have presented, I think actually shows people that this will work. It's sorry that we had to go this way, but these things happen and we have to follow through on it. And I think our next step as a board, or even as the Public Safety Building Committee needs to do, is schedule some forums and some public input for the people that are out there who still may have questions and still are kind of, you know, concerned about how this is going to affect them financially. And I think, you know, you've done all of you that have been involved in this financial program. Kudos to you all. So thank you very much.
Rob? Yeah, I like your approach, Michael. This, you know, this is an impressive plan. I like the idea that you had a benchmark there of that, what the current debt load is, and so that's good. I just had a couple, just kind of one question about the ambulance fees. I know we talked about it last year, raising the fees, and that was when we talked about having additional ambulance. Do you really think there's that much additional revenue that we haven't already gotten? And I kind of thought we'd already been there, so.
No, I mean, and I think we were pretty conservative. You know, I think the chief and Brittany worked really hard to come up with something that's realistic. So, I mean, the actual revenue increase was, we haven't raised fees before.
We didn't do that, okay. And is this going to be a really onerous, surprising fee that people are going to get? Because, you know, ambulance service is really, it's one of the greatest services we have in this town. And people, unfortunately, use it a lot. So is there going to be an impact? What kind of impact is it going to be on the public when they're going to be surprised by the bills?
How much does insurance usually pay for?
It's usually 75%.
That's ultimately what it is.
A lot of it's covered by insurance.
A lot of it's covered by
Yeah,
insurance.
well, that's, okay.
So,
My insurance company doesn't seem to cover anything anymore, but, you know. Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
well below the rate.
Different issue.
Also,
Yes.
it's a,
And we're all facing it too, so.
you know,
yeah.
the amount of money was higher than 280,000, or it was higher than 200,000. It was more like 280. But we wanted to factor in some slippage of, you know,
Yeah,
when
all right, that
things
seems
didn't pay.
great. So I like the approach, and you know, I appreciate the work you put into on this. So
So I too want to thank you for, taking a look at this and taking your time before getting something out to the public, because I know people were sort of chomping at the bit, okay, what are we going to do? I would like to recommend that we get this presentation up on the website so that people who maybe didn't get to watch it here tonight can look at it and ask their questions. I would also recommend, as Joe said, a forum gets put out so that people can come and ask more specific questions, because I really think that this will generate a few more questions. I think you've looked at it in a very good way. I too appreciate the fact that you're staying under that debt number that we're currently at. And I know when all those years ago we did do all those projects as a town, we did a similar kind of thing where we said, okay, we're gonna do town hall, we're gonna do the library, we're gonna do the community center, we're gonna do the high school, all things that as a town, different people supported things, but we all supported and felt it was important to do those things. I think our public safety building is long overdue. And I think Mendez, we don't know yet what's gonna happen there. We are just as a member of the Mendez Feasibility Committee, we are just starting that process. We don't know what it's gonna need. Is it gonna be a new building? Is it gonna be a revamp? We don't know yet.
No.
And most likely by next summer, we'll be having a better understanding of what that might look like. So if this project is already going forward at that point, we'll have a better understanding of what that is, and then we can look at what happens with the Mendez as well. And I think, as you said, as a community, we have certainly grown to learn to support general government and our schools, and I think that is the message that you are presenting by presenting this financing plan, that we can work together, we can get both things done, and do it in a way that our town can afford it. So thank you for this.
Yeah, thanks.
You're welcome.
And Steve, can I add one thing? I'm glad to see you using the free cash after all the.
Well, it's probably, it's part of our policies. It's
Right.
what got us to that stabilization
Right.
fund
That's good.
level.
And
It's what's gonna help us
Right.
borrow at 2.5% as opposed to 3.
And would you, do you see pressure on other how would you sum up, the kind of other projects that may be put on hold or the effect on the rest of the capital budget?
They're more of the smaller projects, Rob. So for example, I mean, Jen, how many projects are like for the schools in our capital plan? And they're like smaller projects, but they're like 20 or 25, and Joe has to get them done within the summer or over Christmas break. We just don't have the bandwidth.
Yeah.
We deferred our maintenance for so long, we're
Right.
playing catch up.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's clear we've got a lot of projects going on, the just drive-through downtown.
Right.
So there is a capacity issue certainly, so,
Yeah. Yes, the bandwidth.
So, I mean, there's gonna be some impact with other things being delayed using those funds, or?
But see, Rob, I think they're gonna be delayed anyway, just because we don't have the
because
people
of
to
the-
execute.
Okay.
yeah. Good.
One thing,
Go ahead.
just one thing I wanted to clarify, because I wasn't clear. So if we ask for the debt exclusion vote that we would ask for, I would anticipate asking for that in May. So I'm not looking at the fall. I just wanted to get
Yeah.
this
No,
put
that's
together
important. Yeah, yeah.
That's
and
good
put it
to
out
know.
there. So we've got nine
Well,
months
gives
to
us plenty of time to do the forums, to,
Yep. Okay.
anticipate and get the questions answered, so. Brandy?
So thank you, this was a great presentation. I think the visual, being able to see it, I think is extremely helpful. I think being able to see that gap of when the current debt exclusions fall off and what, would be picked up is really great. I also had the question about, because you had said that half of this would be funded within the debt limit, like what, our current levy, what are we sacrificing as a town? And then I also just wanted to say, if we have the vote in May, are we still looking to break ground in the summertime? Is that still sort of the timeline?
Yes.
That hasn't shifted?
We're moving forward with the design and engineering. We're continuing to have, our public safety building committee meetings. As I said at the beginning, we're gonna be going before Concom to delineate the wetlands. Yes, we're gonna move forward. We hope to break ground.
The concern is, the cost escalations, right? So the sooner that we initiate, the more obviously manageable the we know what the cost will be, so.
But also, I would think it makes sense waiting till May, because we can't do a vote this fall, because you don't know what your number is yet, right?
No.
And you have an idea, but the building design has
Right.
not been finalized.
That's correct.
It
So
hasn't.
you have to have a much further along design before we can go for the debt
Right.
exclusion, I would think.
And the
So-
likelihood of us actually having bids in hand in May, I think is gonna be slim. I do think we will probably have two revisions of cost estimates after we go through the programming phase.
Okay.
So we should have a pretty solid number.
Okay.
going in.
So the Public Safety Building Committee voted to support this path. And we're asking, Michael, you're asking for the select board to do the same this evening.
Yes, because then, so this gives me some guidance when
Right.
we're developing the budget.
Okay,
So the FY21 budget, which
Okay.
is, believe it or not, preparations are just around the corner.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
Before we do that, I will open it up to anybody that has a question, a comment from the audience. If not, we'll proceed with some action on our part.
They're speechless.
Wow.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Grow now, be happy when I'll get done. Okay. Numbers, more numbers. Yes, we need it. We need it for 30-plus years, yes. First responders are first ones that should get this to be better and to look forward for the town to grow. Thank you for freezing with the ambulance, with the Medicare. We seniors, I'm almost one of them, and my household is happy for that. But I just need to say what I said at the end of the meeting, the last meeting you went to help the town. This is the growing up I'm gonna get from you, is to actually put this on hold for 3 to 5 years, both this and the school, and let the town grow economically and get things famously better, so you can have everything working. Water, sewer, and family houses, developments will be coming in and being built before this is going to get finished. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay, so we are
It's really just
Yeah.
support.
asking to support.
Can I just make one quick
Sure.
comment? Because I know that Mike didn't bring this up, and we did address it at our meeting, and along with the two chiefs that are here. The recommendations that both fire chief and police chief have made, there will be no personnel cuts in any way, shape, or form, so you're not gonna lose service that way with this financial plan that's being addressed and being voted on this evening. I just wanna make people be aware of that, because it's critical, because the first thing people are gonna say is, well, what are we gonna lose? Are we losing manpower? No, we're not. We're not losing anybody. I just wanna make that very clear.
Good point.
That's good to hear, because we've worked really hard,
Yeah.
especially on the fire side, to get up to where we are, which we
Yeah.
already know is still a little short from
Right.
a community our size really needs to be.
Yeah, we can't go one step forward, 2 steps back on that type of stuff.
Okay, so I guess a statement of support?
I move that we, as the select board, support the funding plan as presented by Town Manager Michael Herbert to continue moving forward with a much-needed public safety building.
I'll second that.
So motion a second. Any other comments? If none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? And that carries 5-0, so thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Moving forward.
Moving
Thank you.
forward.
And thank you for the support from our
Yes.
Thanks for showing
public
up, guys.
safety.
Yes, thank you for
gals,
being
thank
here.
you.
Appreciate it, thank you. Our next agenda item is a presentation from the United Group Companies. This is related to a project on Lot 2 of the Ashland Rail Transit District. A little context for this project. This has been in discussions for quite a while now. We, the board, met in retreat back in June, and we came to a consensus of our desired project scale that consisted of 150 units, a smaller footprint, a 25% affordability component with the inclusion of affordability to support a 30 to 50% median income level. And then also concerns, we had concerns about the roadway as it was currently being proposed. So I would just present to the board, I guess, when I reflect on these kinds of projects, you know, I like to frame the concept. So to me, the open issues, the questions are the footprint of the project, the number of units, the configuration of open space. We're literally a partner in this, in Lot 2, the roadway placement, and then the potential development agreement that may develop or be developed between the board and the developer. So at that point, I think we'll open it up to the United Group of Companies. Mr. Ussolini is here, if you want to come up to the microphone, and Mr. Powers.
Quick question, Mike.
Yeah.
So we sent you guys a PDF of the site plan. I have a revised presentation which has just a bunch of other stuff in it. Is that acceptable?
Yeah.
Do you need some help putting it up?
Yeah.
I need some technical help, I don't know, but.
Yeah.
Take a 2-minute set.
And we will, after this presentation,
There's
you
a
know,
thumb drive,
obviously,
can I take that out?
obviously, there's interested parties here in the audience, so we will certainly open it up to any comments and questions after the presentation.
Okay, so.
Oh, yeah, I did so. Okay, I got it.
Oh, special.
Yes, you are.
Well, that's true, but not because
That's
of
what
it.
Rich says.
Okay, so we're gonna go to.
Okay. What's that?
Excuse me.
You're gonna go, yeah, where's page down? Yeah. You gonna do this yourself? Okay.
Certainly won't be falling asleep.
I know, it's cold.
Freezing.
I know, I wish I had,
It's cold in here.
it's freezing in here.
Let me get a blank.
No, I have my sweater, but I know to bring a sweater every time. That-
Wait for Joe.
Yeah, let's wait a minute, yes. So, yeah, we'll just give him a minute. So, good presentation, Michael.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But yeah, if we can get that up so people can start looking at it
yeah.
and sending you questions.
Might not have all the answers yet.
But that's okay.
Okay.
It's the start.
Joseph is back, United Group, you're on.
Good evening, Select Board. My name is Michael Ussolini. I'm president of the United Group of Companies. Thank you for having us here tonight and the opportunity to present
the Arbella at Ashland and where we have the project today. I'd like to go over United Group a little bit. United Group is a full-service real estate development firm. We were founded in 1972. We've completed over $3 billion worth of real estate. We've developed 3,000 active adult and IL light and affordable senior housing apartments. The Arbella at Ashland will be an active adult and affordable senior housing community. We've also done 20,000 multifamily apartments we've developed in New York, Georgia, Florida, Colorado, and in Massachusetts. We've also done 5,000 beds of student housing, 2 million square feet of commercial space, and we have a development group, property management group, finance group, construction management group, and accounting and leasing. We're about a 300 person organization, and we've been doing this for a long, long time. We're one of the early companies in the United States that has done active adult and IL light senior housing. The Arbella at Ashland, we're proposing to be a 180 unit project consisting of 1 and 2 bedroom garden apartments, as well as townhomes. It will be, this is the site plan that we feel is the best site plan for the residents of the town of Ashland that will live there. We've gone back and forth with the town board on various site plans. We've met with the neighbors of Apple Ridge. We've flown balloons to set heights. We've walked the site, and the 36 townhome units and the 2 4-story buildings that house 144 garden units with the 8,000 plus square foot clubhouse with an indoor lap pool and the courtyard, in our opinion, is the best project for the residents of the town. And the reason that is because we're developing this project that's going to be here for long after all of us are gone. It's going to be here for many, 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 many decades, and the residents of the town will be able to live here. This is going to allow the residents of your town to be able to sell homes and move into this community and not have to leave the town of Ashland and go live elsewhere because they don't have this housing choice in their community. I put in front of you a brochure called SUN, which is our Senior Umbrella Network. This is a 7-prong model, and one of the prongs is health and wellness. So in the health and wellness prong, we do fitness classes, we do aqua aerobics in the pool, we do Tai Chi classes on balancing. We have visiting physicians and visiting podiatry. We also have pharmacy delivery. Another prong is education and lifelong learning. We'll do speaker series on financial planning and estate planning. We'll do partnerships with in education with universities. Another prong is fun and recreation. We'll do happy hours, we'll do cooking classes, wine tastings, all kinds of events. So when you go back to the site plan, you can see that the courtyard is a very integral space that's important to the residents living in that community. There's going to be residents living in that those townhomes that are going to have patios that's going to look out onto that courtyard. We've worked very hard to create, to expand beyond the buffer that's required under the zoning between us and Apple Ridge. We put in a road that meets the criteria for slope and is the least amount of impact on clearing and cutting of the area. This green space delivers 23 acres of green space, which was originally to be open space, to the town of Ashland. And this courtyard in this area, in this community, we have a pickleball court, we have bocce, we're gonna do events and programming in that courtyard. We'll do yoga out there for the seniors, for balancing and Tai Chi in the nice months, and it's critical. To shrink it and to close it up bastardizes the development plan and the whole project. It really negatively impacts the residents in your town that are going to live there. Here's an example of some of the things we do and the kind of participation that we get from the seniors in the other communities that we've developed in New York, Florida, and Georgia. This is in our project in Bonita Springs. This was a fashion show and a WOW event with Chico's, where we had the seniors, some of the seniors as models. We had over 150 people attend this that all lived there. It's fantastic. We do Wind Down Wednesdays and events, which is the socialization is so important. I think some of you have heard in the news and read articles. It was recently in the Boston papers about, you know, it's very sad. Suicide rates in seniors is very significant, and living in their homes alone it's solitude. And when you're able to move into a community like this, like the Arbella, and we deliver the lifestyle programs, we don't just build senior housing, say it's 62 and older, age restricted, and provide shelter. We provide the programming, and the courtyard space and the clubhouse is very critical to all of that. Here's an example of some of the other programs that at our other properties. You know, we had a group that went parasailing that was from Florida. You have the movie theater, the bowling. We have the Romeos, which is a group of people that go out and eat dinner together. This is a van that is an example of the vans and shuttles that we will purchase that will be part of the project. We screen it with the property name and all the activity, and we use this to take them to, they'll go to the senior center, they'll go to banking and shopping and grocery and doctors and medical appointments. And we have that all set up on a calendar. Here's an example of a sample calendar for one of our projects. It's very robust. We do a lot of activity and programming. You can see doctor's appointments on here. You can see the WOW event, where we're doing a full dinner with Rock and Rob and dancing. You can see the Wind Down Wednesdays. You can see the stretching and the balancing classes that are on here, or the trivia. This is an example of some of the finishes of the property, the Class A product and the quality product that we build and develop, and we will deliver here at the Arbella at Ashland. This is an example of what one of our buildings looks like that was 4 stories. We have an outdoor deck that is great for socialization, that is occupied all the time by the occupants of that building. It's a very successful project. It's 100%, it's 100% with a wait list. It's doing really well. Filled up extremely quickly. This is in Albany, New York. This is an example of a game and a function room and programming and activities. Living rooms and fireplace and socialization areas that is filled with people when you walk into the clubhouse. In the indoor lap pool, we do aqua aerobics. And this is an example of one of the classes that's going on. Here is an example of our movie theater. Every one of our clubhouses has a salon. We'll have a stylist that's from the area that will come. It's just for the residents. And it's tough to get an appointment because all the seniors use it. An example, this is a project we built in Utica, New York, where people are playing cards and interacting. We put in fitness centers, state-of-the-art, yoga rooms, we'll have that, and exercise and fitness and balancing is very critical to the programming that we deliver. Why Ashland? Why are we coming to Ashland to deliver this project, and why are we looking in the entire Boston MSA to deliver? Because this kind of product doesn't exist in Ashland, and it doesn't exist in a lot of other communities. The active adult. There's a huge need. There's 17,000 seniors within the primary market area that are 62 and older, making 50,000 and greater, that are in your community. That's the number. It's significant, and we're only going to capture a very small percentage of that at 180. They're living longer. They want to stay in their community. A project like the Arbella will allow the people in your community to sell their homes, move into this housing, have socialization, get rid of the maintenance and what they have, and they'll be able to still go to the same churches and the same restaurants and their friends. They won't have to move out of their community. It's very important. It's a serious situation that the entire Massachusetts and Boston area is facing. This project follows your strategic plan. It follows your housing and production plan. It provides a diverse housing stock in the garden apartments and the townhomes. It provides a diverse pricing in that housing stock with 25% of the units being affordable. It helps you with your subsidized housing inventory and raising it to over 6%. It meets your strategic plan in housing production and all the goals, and what the zoning and everything on the site said, up to 180 units. It provides 23 acres of the open space, stops the further development in the RT, meets with the Lot 2 deed restrictions, gives you a means to a safe harbor from other 40B developers. It doesn't impact your school systems. It's less traffic on the roads. It's a win-win. So, we feel very passionate about the project. We feel very passionate about the layout. We've gone back and forth. We've listened. You know, the layout and the site plan is very different than the very first iteration that we brought here in February when we first met with the select board. You know, we're gonna move forward. We're very passionate about the project.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
For the presentation. I'll open up to the board for comments and discussion. We'll get to you.
I'll jump in. So I appreciate that you've been, working with us, and I think that's been good. I still think that, one of your first presentations was you had told us it would be at 150 or 155 units. So hearing that it's back to the 180 is a little disappointing from my perspective. I think you have made some changes, and that's good. In regards to price ranges, you're saying that, so what would we be looking at for an affordable unit? What would that look like? Do you have a ballpark or?
The one bedroom affordable would be at 1,700. That's about where it starts.
Okay.
And what are the sizes of that unit? Square foot?
They range in size from 700 to 800 square feet.
Okay.
So the affordable units would be spread across pro rata equally. Those different unit types and sizes. So you'd have affordable 2-bedroom townhomes too.
Okay. That's good.
Good. You, Rob?
Yeah, sure. When we did the balloon test, of course there's a lot of trees there now. Have you reviewed what the visibility would be like into your current plan? Like, I'm assuming you're taking out a lot of trees between the corners where the balloons were and the Apple Ridge boundary. Like, is there some? It struck me that a lot of the tallest trees were close to the balloon. So in this plan, at least I'm looking at one corner. A lot of the taller trees would be. I thought the balloons were pretty effectively screened. That was my impression. With the current vegetation, my question is, under your plan, what would that be affected? Did you guys kind of look at that when you laid this plan
Well,
out?
you have the clearing limits is the black line on the plan, and we're
Yeah.
not clearing beyond that. And that's pretty dense throughout there.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember how tall the trees were at that point. I thought they kind of got shorter, but, so that was, and those are just garages there, right? So
Those
they're not-
are one-story garages.
Yeah, so they're not all that key to your plan, I wouldn't think. I mean, they should be somewhere, but I'm not sure they need to be right there in that configuration. I guess that's what I would suggest. The other thing, in terms of.
It's important to sprinkle the garages around the garden buildings if people park there and they walk to the end of the buildings or they walk to
Right.
their unit, to be close to the unit where they park, especially when, in the winter season.
Yeah, so I would say, is it possible to move them even closer to the building there? And
Well, you have to
save more
have the
vegetation?
ability to get a fire truck in and around that road.
And that's what you're saying?
And that,
you've done?
we've done all those tests.
Yeah. I'm
We've
just
ran-
wondering if you can get a little
We've
more.
ran the fire truck all the way
Yeah,
through.
I'm just wondering if you can get a little more space there or reconfigure it a bit. That's, I guess, what I'm just suggesting on that. And in terms of, like, so we seem to have a sticking point with the number of units. Can you tell us, why the additional, what are we talking, 20 or 30 units is?
Well, I'd like to clarify what Yolanda said. I never said 150. Never, not Michael Ussolini. When I was here in February, I said it was, we were developing 180. I never said 150.
Okay. But
Mike Herbert said 150.
right, so but I think, and you're saying that is really essential.
It
Those
is,
additional units are essential.
it
'cause-
is essential. You have 25% of the units, 45 units that are gonna be affordable.
So I'm just wondering if, can you share the economic analysis with us? Like,
The economic analysis will be in the 40B application that gets filed very shortly.
okay. I had some others, but,
Yeah,
well, go, if
well,
you want to go ahead, sure.
Well,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
Michael's got a comment,
I have a
Brandy, and
question.
I would
Sure.
just suggest, just to clarify, that, yes, you did not, you said 180 back in February, but I believe Mr. Flanagan was the one that represented 150, so that's where the 150.
Mr. Flanagan might have said 150 in conversations with Michael, but that was so early on in the process.
But that's, I'm just pointing out, that's where we got the 150, and that's
Right,
where,
but
why we
I'm the
continue to,
owner and developer, and I came in February and I said it's 180.
And at that point, I know some of us questioned that 180 because we had heard other number, we had heard the lower number in January, before,
Right.
when
but-
the
and
information
I
was
wasn't
first
at that
presented.
meeting.
Okay, well, it doesn't matter at this point. I guess that's why some of us are, we're hearing
And the zoning says up to 180.
of current zoning.
Understood. Deed restriction says up to 180.
Michael?
Yeah, and the current zoning says, it would be up to 180. Yeah, I just want to reiterate, I mean, I did not come up with that number out of thin air. And I realize Mr. Flanagan is no longer with you, but at the time of those conversations, he was the point person for UGC.
Right.
He was representing your company. And, you have to, I mean, we've had some conversations, some
How
good
many
conversations.
public meetings did he attend, Michael?
I don't think we had.
None.
Yeah.
The one he attended, we told you it was 180.
Okay. Brandy?
I have a just quick question. You had talked about the age restriction on the development, and I just wanted to see whether you were committed to keeping it 62 and over?
Yes,
Yes. Okay.
absolutely.
They're required to.
That's why we want the deed and the restrictions and land restricted that way, because that's what we're building, that's what we're developing, it's for the seniors of this town.
Okay, thank you.
So your process going forward, you've submitted a plan to the town planner?
We submitted an A&R, yep.
Okay, we submitted that. That hasn't been, what's the
So
status
that
of that
hasn't
right
been
now?
filed.
Hasn't been filed
It doesn't
yet.
have the required signatures for the application,
Okay,
so.
so that's open. And then you mentioned you're going forward with a 40B process.
That's correct.
So you'll be applying to the zoning board for that.
That's correct.
Okay.
And I do have a question with respect to that, because in prior discussions and talks while you were here, that was never brought up, so why all of a sudden the change in philosophy?
Because we
going
feel
40B?
like we're getting stymied, and we need to
Feel like
develop.
you're getting what, I'm
We
sorry?
feel like we're getting stymied.
Stymied
don't-
by what? The
stymied
process?
by the process, yes.
Well, there is a process that has to be taken place, so, I mean, every developer has to go through a process.
We've had multiple conversations with certain people, and
It sounds like you're becoming very,
changes all the time.
agitated with respect to this process with the town. And my question that I have is that, in part of the discussions that way back, early back, when Bob Gaynor was involved in this, with the development agreement that came to the, as part of this Lot 2, the town was given, was it 24 acres, roughly?
So the deed restriction says 20 to 24
20
acres, to be determined by, I think, one of REG interests as agreeable to the Board of Selectmen,
Okay,
or the Select Board.
for the select board, okay.
And our plan provides 23.
Okay, so the property that, on the diagram that you have presented to us, which is the color map with the green space, is that the land that is gonna be given to the town as part of that agreement? So what I'm looking at is that all the buffer zone areas that's gonna surround your building is gonna be the town buffer zone of the land that was gonna be given to the town. And it looks like it's been divided up in a way that the town couldn't utilize it to do another project or put something that the town may want in there, such as a park or a dog park or some other facility that would benefit the town. And I'm kinda curious as to why that was laid out that way. And I'd like an explanation before you leave tonight.
So, Joe,
You wanna play hardball, we can play hardball.
so, Joe,
Yes, sir.
it was laid out that way because of the topography and the slopes, as everybody knows, and as we've gone over before, over and over on this parcel. That entrance from the MBTA access road up to where we've sited the property is extremely steep. We've put the road in an area that minimizes the amount of cuts and fills and meets with the grades that will be conducive to highway specs as well as the seniors driving up and down that road.
Okay, so the.
And the thing that you did with Gaynor, that the town did, originally was supposed to be open space. It was then changed at the last minute to him, he's not here to talk about it, to municipal purposes. And as somebody who's gonna invest tens of millions of dollars into a project, I'm terribly concerned about what municipal purposes means. And I frankly think the folks of Apple Ridge should be concerned too.
Rob, you had, I think,
Well, I just
some
wanted,
more.
so, yeah, in terms of the open space, does anyone talk to you about a trail through
No.
there? An access? So, and it's, you know, we're looking for a way to get from High Street to the MBTA access road, and we have a couple routes, and one, the secondary route is through this property. But that's never been discussed with you or brought up?
It has not. I've asked why the town is so interested in this corner up in here, and it hasn't been explained to me.
So, if I may, it has been explained, I just don't think it's been explained to your satisfaction, and I can understand that. It is,
Can you explain what
It
the
is a
municipal
complete-
purposes is, Michael? And what
Oh,
what the
general
town may,
munici-
what the town may use it for?
well, general municipal purposes is very, very general.
I-
The town could use it
It's very
for-
general.
Could use it for a dog park, they could use it for a land swap for another development, they could use it for, you know,
So
a
it could
park.
affect me as an owner of the senior, and it could seriously affect the people in Apple
Well,
Ridge.
I think you're pointing out why it's important, or it would be desirable for us to come to some sort of agreement, I would think, about the use of that land and this project.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think the point is, Michael, and I mean, I've explained this before, is that, you know, this does not, the way this is configured is, I don't from me personally, I don't think that feels like open space. I think there's a lot of acreage that's given there, but I think it's really kind of designed to be more of a buffer for your development and not necessarily for the benefit of the town. And so, you know, my thing is like, why should we think of it as open space when it doesn't really serve open space as an open space purpose for us? You know, that's kind of where we are.
And I would say that we've talked about a potential trail through that property. Maybe not with you directly, and there's not a definitive place yet, but I know I've spoken to Tom about it when.
What kind of trail?
So we're trying to create our portion of a multimodal trail to connect with the Upper Charles Trail that goes through Milford and Holliston, and hopefully would then connect to possibly Framingham and into Hopkinton, which could be a benefit to your residents if they're active residents to have a trail.
What would the trail be made of?
It's not defined yet. It could be, you know, if you look at the MBT access road and you see the trail to the side of the.
It's an asphalt trail right
A
next to it.
potential asphalt trail running through.
It could
So
be,
how-
it could be.
how
Or it
wide-
could
so
be-
how wide is that? Potential
Those are
multimodal trail.
typically about 10
10
feet
feet.
wide,
Yeah.
which is a
So if
typical
it's
trail of
a
a
10-foot
multimodal.
wide trail, how wide does the area have to be to make a 10-foot wide trail?
12. I mean, they can be pretty narrow.
Typically 12 to 15 feet,
Yeah.
but
Well, you have plenty of
Is it-
room there.
But the grade is such that with the way it's configured, just like you're concerned with the grades for the road,
So.
we would be concerned with the grades for the
But that
bikes.
trail can come by the road as it comes
Well,
down.
that was gonna be another question that I had, if it's okay if I ask it. So I'm looking at your road, you know, this is not detailed engineering, obviously. Are you planning to have sidewalks on that road? Are you planning on, you know, could there be a path next to it
Yeah,
kind of thing? So
absolutely.
that your residents could access down, walk to the MBTA. I mean, you know, you could have 62-year-olds that are very active that may still wanna walk to the train. So I would think you'd wanna have sidewalks and availability for them to connect to the MBTA and not just be
Mhm.
a driveway. Okay.
As a senior, if you were living there, how would you feel about people constantly walking through a trail all day long, day and night, that you didn't know?
I think it's,
Just out of
I don't
curiosity.
think it's, I mean, I personally, as someone who support trails, and in research that I've done, it's been found that having trails actually makes areas safer because there are people walking and being active.
Will
You
it
sh-
be,
you
would
would-
it be
you would-
lit?
I think
we
the
don't
vision
know.
is
The-
for it to be lit.
Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
looking at Rob.
You
Probably
put,
not.
you
Probably
put
not.
trees, you know, you put buffers, so it's not like they're actually actively seeing it. And, you know, based on your plan, it's not like, you know, you have maybe 12 units that would see it, right? Which is, anyway, that's,
I guess,
some of the
yeah, I guess
concerns.
my point is that, you know, assuming we go through some sort of process, that, you know, if that's a possibility, I'd just like to think if that's something that you'd be amenable to or willing to
To put
consider.
it on our site or to put it on the open space,
I would think it would be in the use of the open space.
or a combination?
so what's the buffer?
Over 100 feet.
Over 100, okay.
In
It
the,
would-
in the smallest area, it's over 100 feet. There's other areas where it's
It's
Just for
more.
much
purposes of
more.
The property line is in red, the
Mhm.
black is the buffer zone, and everything in between is the 100 feet.
Okay.
I mean, it would be interesting if you'd consider it as part of, but most of the time they skirt developments, they don't generally go through them. There's usually
Mhm.
some sort of gate or entrance onto the development, and it is a major asset. Look into it a little bit, you know, if you've ever been on a bike trail.
We've done trails in our senior housing communities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So-
this is a regional trail system that we're trying to
Okay.
connect to now. They're not lit and they're not used 24/7. This is a
Yeah.
Right.
daytime activity.
Where does the trail go to the north?
To the north,
Or,
it would.
well, up to, at the top of the
It
map.
comes
I'm
off of
not sure if
High
It
that's,
Street is
would
up
be
here.
off of High
Yeah, it
Street.
comes off of High
is there a trail there or you have to build it?
We're
No,
still working on it.
We're
Okay.
in planning stages, so.
Okay.
So that's just one
So
example
it
of.
would be a trail
communi-
to High Street to have future development.
To get to the access.
Right, so it's
road.
you know, this is one example of a potential
Municipal
municipal use.
Okay.
Okay, so I'd like to open it up to the attendees tonight for any comments or questions. Up to the microphone, please.
Hi, Peter Dana, 41 Wilbur Drive. I was recently sent a plan where all of these townhomes that abutted the homes closest to it were condensed into a single unit garden apartment. Is that what we're looking at here, or was
No.
that dropped?
No, this replaces that with the townhomes again. This does not have the.
And
It was
the 12-foot
two-story.
burn that was talked about in that?
Yeah, does this include, Tom, the 10-foot burn that you did? Does not.
Okay, that was my question.
Yeah.
All right.
And what Peter is referring to is, there was an idea, a concept of this block of townhomes to the west, consolidating them into a single, two-story, was it two-story,
Yes.
Tom?
Yep.
Was it 70, it was apartments, it was another apartment building that was smaller.
Paul?
Good evening, Paul Wilkinson, 16 Musset Hill Road. I actually like most of what was in your deck. I mean, I think it's a great concept for seniors, with the exception of the one slide that's on the screen tonight. I'm gonna sound a little bit like a broken record from previous meetings, but really nothing has changed in terms of the size of this project. Is still too big at 180 units, and really the footprint, although they've moved some buildings around, and there was a third apartment building at one point in time, now it's townhouses, but you know, it's the footprint of where it is and the proximity to the houses in Apple Ridge has really not changed. It's just too close. And I know we've talked, and I know it's the cuts and the fills and the slope, and it's money out of the developer's pocket, but having the development where it is, it's really money out of the resident's pocket, unfortunately, because it's gonna change the equity we all have in our homes within that neighborhood, just because it's gonna be so close, and that's all you're gonna see. Right now, 6 months out of the year, you can see all the way through to the existing apartments. My fear is that not only those 6 months, probably all 12 months, you're gonna be able to see what's going on over here, once this is carved out that close to the homes. So I just, you know, like you to consider that, taking money out of the residents and the town taxpayers to, you know, make sure that the developer is able to keep it in theirs. I think there could be a workable project if it's smaller and pushed back, decent concept, but it's just not the right footprint for us. Thank you.
Paul, could I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Just to follow up, so are those townhomes, is that new? Did he have taller buildings before there? Or-
Well,
and you don't think the
There's been
townhomes?
a dozen probably different designs floating around since, what, February?
Right, but you don't,
There was 3 apartment buildings and one of the
all
older
right,
versions.
but I got the impression last meeting that at least some people thought that townhomes were a better profile.
Such did I. That
Yeah,
was me.
but, and so you see some of that here, but,
Better concept, still too big a footprint, still too close.
and you're saying what, it would, if the tall buildings were less of them, or they were moved somewhere else on the site? Is
Yeah,
that-
I mean, all that space in the back, all along the other apartment buildings out to the road, I know that's where the slope is, and that's why they don't wanna build there. but
Right.
I think you could
Yeah.
make much better use and use the 20 to 24 acres of open space better to screen the property behind the existing development, and do some of your municipal activities and your walking trails. You have much bigger green space to work with if that was all pushed back.
So, Paul, the only thing I will push back on, because
Yeah.
I think it requires some kind of data,
Yeah.
is, you know, when I hear comments about property values and the impact on property values. So, do you have any data that supports that
I
statement?
wish I was in real estate and could be able to tell you that. I
Well,
don't.
it's probably something we should, you know, I mean, it's hard to respond if you don't really have kind of facts and figures to, I mean, again, it's just,
Just, you know, take the house, and a house going up High Street that's looking at the back of those parking garages. And
understood,
what do you think the
understood.
value of that home is compared to what it was before?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's important.
If you need me to consult and bring back some data, I'll do my best to do that.
Yeah, I think everything that I see and hear in Ashland is that the housing values continue to go up. I don't, maybe not necessarily for each and every individual property, but that seems to be the trend in Ashland. And I can tell you that I live behind the Chestnut Street Apartments. and I can see the apartments through my back door and my back windows. And I will tell you that it's had zero impact on my life, and it's had zero impact on my property value. And they're actually a lot closer to my home than what this is proposed to be. So I'm cautious about when I hear property value things.
Did you move into that home when the apartments were already there?
They were already pre-existing,
Well,
yes.
that's
And that
the
was
big-
my choice to do.
Absolutely,
Right.
that's the big difference here, is
Yeah.
when I bought into my home, I knew what was zoned to be back there.
Understood.
And already approved, and now we're trying to change the game.
I'm just cautious about the statements about property values, that's all.
Sure.
Good, thanks.
Anything else?
Thanks.
Just one comment, you said what was zoned is now changing. Not completely, right? The townhomes that are zoned there
Yeah, that's,
are actually exactly what people were saying they wanted kept there.
that's right.
So,
This, compared to the number, the units that are in the apartments?
it was gonna be 180 townhomes that
Right.
were zoned for that.
Yep, that's right.
So,
Intermittent
it
townhomes.
has changed a little bit, but but you knew at some,
Probably would have
but
been
I
all
guess,
over the
I guess
total
the other
property.
comment is, you knew it was zoned for development,
Yes,
so it's now being developed. Unfortunately, that happens if you buy
yeah.
open
it's-
space. That's the,
Do you disagree that it's trying to be developed, not to what it was intended, not to what it's current zoned?
The only thing that's different from the zoning is those two.
Those two huge apartment
those
buildings,
two
four-story
apartment
apartment
buildings.
buildings. It's a huge difference. Huge
That's
difference.
That's what 40B is for.
The reason
Which is
they're
why
going
they would-
40B, somebody asked the question
I know why they're
earlier,
going 40B.
is because they know that it won't get past the town meeting. Because the
Understood.
town residents
We-
don't want that.
We understand completely.
Hi, Tracy Terry. We live at 11 Lorraine Drive, right at the curve of the road there on this diagram. My neighbors and I are quite concerned about the road right there. We've heard Tom discuss the engineering and the grade. However, on the diagrams we see, that road goes right to the edge of the buffer zone. So if we're talking about sidewalks or anything else, it's very important to us that that buffer zone be very clearly protected. That is a scrub forest,
I'm sorry, could you point out, what are you talking about, what
Talking
area?
about right here.
right there.
Oh,
And
I
this is-
see,
I believe
okay.
this is your house right here, right?
Okay.
Tracy?
Yes,
All right, very good.
No.
that is the one next to it.
Right here?
Yeah, I can't tell on this map,
Yeah,
but
it's-
our,
it's
the
in-
Amitas
It's
are,
in this general vicinity.
exactly, our neighbor and I and us, we are the closest to this road. So, in some of his earlier walkthroughs, Tom put up the tape to show us where the buffer zone was. That was a great visual, and it's startling. You see it from the back of our house very clearly. We understand that we are zoned for that, but again, it is scrub forest. So you clear that area, and then there's a cleared area, and then there's cirrus. So we are very concerned about the buffer zone being protected. If sidewalks, et cetera, are considered, we'd ask that that be pushed and considered that much further, and the grade looked at again, frankly. Thank you.
So you think the road is a little too close to you there? And you think it
Absolutely.
should be straight, go straighter?
We would of course prefer the road be further back. It is, literally on the buffer zone in the diagrams as we read them
Towards Cirrus?
to our neighbors, the Almeidas, and within a few, close, I wouldn't approximate the feet of the buffer zone behind our home.
What's the distance there between the road and the boundary?
Where, here?
Yeah, what's that?
Well, this is 100 feet.
That's
Between the black
100
line
feet.
and the red line
Okay,
is
so you're
100
right
feet.
there, okay,
Yeah.
that's 100 feet, okay.
And what's the limitation on the other side of that road area? You're
Here?
right in that area?
It's the grade. It's, just so everybody understands, you're going from here to here is an elevation change of over 100 feet. And it's steeper over in this area than it is coming here. And in order to maintain the slope and the grade for building code purposes, that's why you're getting the wind and the bend in the road to maintain the grade. If you were to just draw the straight shot from here to here, point to point, the grade, it would exceed the grade and it would not be, we couldn't build it.
Hi, Peter Dana, 41 Wilbur Drive. Back to what it was originally zoned for. At that time, there was no deed restriction, correct? So it had a maximum of up to 180 units, but there was also how many townhomes could be placed per area? I mean, wasn't it limited by, you couldn't put them too close together or something, some sort of,
I wanna say it was like 10 units an acre.
okay, all right. So now that have the new deed where we're only allowed to build on 23 acres, what would be the maximum total units allowed in terms of townhomes for the property as it is currently zoned?
So I
How many
believe,
acres is your parcel?
It's subject to a couple of.
About 14 acres.
No, it's 18 acres. This development is 18 acres, so if you take the
So it's
road
180.
and the footprint, it's 18 acres, so it would be 180, it would be 180 units.
Well,
That's
it's
the simple math.
34 acres, correct?
so I thought it
38,
was
38.
30, but I thought Michael said earlier that the amount of land that was being gifted to the town was 23 acres. And now you're saying the development's 18
Well,
acres, so that's
it-
41.
I think right now, we're trying to get the town 23 acres. That's the proposal, to get you 23 acres.
Well, anyhow, my point is, under the current deed and the current zoning, this would not be allowed, and the residents would be willingly happy to take a project like that.
Tom?
Tom Powers, Powers Realty and United Development Group. Just for clarification purposes, so everybody understands, the zoning bylaw breaks down the Cirrus Apartments and it was Lot 1 and Lot 2. Under the original zoning, Lot 1 and Lot 2 were allowed to build up to 600 units. Okay, and of the 600 units, 500 were originally going to be apartments that were permitted and approved under JPI, and then another 100 were going to be for Lot 1. Okay, so what happened was you were allowed to intermix. If you didn't build the full 500 on Lot 1, you could transfer them down. You could transfer them down to Lot 2. So technically, before we got to the deed restriction, okay, as the current zoning lies, Lot 2 could take 252 units total. Okay, if you didn't, Peter, just so you understand, if the zoning didn't change, okay, and we just took it as it is today, as it was before the deed restriction, Lot 2, okay, from here all the way up and wrapping around the back of Cirrus, the zoning would allow you to build 252 two-story townhomes. That's the math. So the number was 600 total, less 398, which is what Cirrus has built, gets you to 252.
Exactly.
So that's really that's the sort of the simple math, and so what we're saying is we don't want to build 252 units. We only want to build 180, and that's where and of the 180, 144 of them would be a change of use under the multifamily 4-story, and these units here, they are all as of right. So the whole development is not really, we're not asking for a complete zone change for the entire parcel. We're only asking for a zone change for this parcel here, for these two buildings, these 144 units in the 4 stories. So in my opinion, would you rather have 252 townhomes, or would you rather have 180?
But Tom, you can't do 252 because when we bought the rail transit district, part of that was the deed restriction.
I understand. I understand
That's
that, but I'm
why.
just saying, practically speaking, before the deed restriction took place. So the way,
But that's you're using that as a baseline, which is not an accurate baseline. So.
Sir?
David Crumholtz, 20 Russet Hill Road. Got a couple of questions. First, Mr. Ussolini, you made a comment before in your presentation about 17,000 people and 50K. What was that in reference to?
When we, whoops, I'm very sorry about that. When we look at doing active adult senior housing or IL light, we look at the areas and the demographics of an area to determine the demand. Okay, and when we look at the Ashland area, and we look at the primary market area, which is about a 5-mile ring, and we look at the number of senior households and seniors that are in that area, there's over 17,000 seniors that are making 50,000 and greater within this primary market.
Is that to imply that that could be almost considered a baseline for affordability? That someone in that class would be able to afford to buy something or rent?
If we're gonna do a Q&A, come on up.
Here.
Come on up.
We'll stand there and do it.
When we look at our entry rents is $1,780 a month or $1,700 a month. If we look at income levels of 50,000 and greater, all right, and we're looking at, we have 25% of the project is affordable, and so that's kind of how we look at the demand and the profile. And we're only building 180 units, so when you look at that's a little over 1% capture rate of the 17,000 people that would be available. It's pretty minor.
Okay,
We're not gonna even, with 180 units. I mean, your seniors have a need in this town for this housing, and with all due respect to Mr. Wilkinson, I'm sorry, but when you say the residents don't want it, I've talked to a lot of senior residents in this town, and they want it. So, I disagree. And we're only capturing with 180 a very small percentage of that demand. There's a huge need.
What would you consider either the average or the median or mean, whatever you want, as the annual salary for?
We build senior housing, and we've done over 3,000 units, all right? And the income levels of the seniors living in our communities, an active adult and IL light, it ranges from $30,000 up to $200,000 a year. It's a middle income to upper middle income.
So that's 3,000, that'd be similar to what we'd expect here? Or is that
I
nationwide?
don't know if you're getting confused. The 3,000 units, it's 3,000 apartments, 16 different properties. It's in New York, Florida, Georgia, Colorado. That's correct.
While you're still here, in the plan that was distributed, it's the material that's distributed this week, there were a couple of half a dozen parking spaces down right by the entrance off the MBTA road. What was that? What's that for? There were no buildings around it, just an island.
The thought was that the seniors that were, early on in the plan, the thought was that the seniors that were living there could drive down and if they didn't want to walk, could park there and they could walk the multimodal path. Or people that are in the area, if they wanted to park there and they wanted to walk the multimodal or they wanted to bike, they could be there as a benefit for the town.
Okay, thank you. I know in Mr. Gainer's definitive plan a year ago, there was a separate house, a separate club area and another parking for it. I was wondering if this was left over from that somehow.
No, it wasn't.
Okay.
Good.
The question, I guess, I'm not sure for whom, the material that came out this week said that this was being pursued as a non-subdivision development. What does that mean from the standpoint of what does the town have or not have oversight of in the development process? And will the detailed plans be made available for review online by residents of the town?
Is that a question for the town? That's a
Yeah,
question
so
for the town, I believe.
That phrase you used,
Non-subdivision.
Yes.
So this is being done as a 40B project.
Okay.
So also known as a comprehensive permit. So under Chapter 40B, if a community does not have the required 10% housing or they are not making strides towards their housing production plan, a developer can come in and basically apply to do a project that waives all of the zoning laws associated with the town. So the zoning laws don't apply. So
You have the 25%.
you have to do 25% affordable. I think there's some things that you can, that the zoning board of appeals, who would actually be hearing that, would be able to do, based on traffic and safety and things of that concern, but it's a really high bar for a Chapter 40B project for a town to deny, something like that.
Not so much interested in denying, but from the standpoint of during the development process, if the town would like to see storm drainage be a different way, or the width of the roads, or the
Yeah.
radius of
Yeah.
curvature
So
of the roads, or
they'll
things
even-
like that.
they'll probably
Does the
reduce
town-
the units,
Does the
too.
town have oversight for that?
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
The zoning board is, when it's a comprehensive, as Michael said, a comprehensive permitting process. It's through the zoning board of appeals for 40B. And what that means is that that one committee, or that one board, adjudicates all of the conditions. But they do apply conditions to projects that they review and permit. So, that is really, that's the route that they're going, and that is the route, or the vehicle that you will use to make your case about changes to the development.
Okay, and again, going back to other things that you can find online through, I guess it's this co-urbanized system, you can see the detailed plans for the developments. Would the detailed plans for this program, for this project, be available online?
Yeah, either through the co-urbanized platform or on the town's website. We might be in the process of phasing co-urbanize out, but we would then have it housed on a section of the town's webpage.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna do one last question, we're gonna wrap it up and move on. We still have, so Peter, you go. Michael, you wanna wrap up some of the direction that we're going with?
So if they file a 40B, okay, pretty much the town, the residents are certainly being thrown out of the equation, but the town process also of getting permitting and all of that is also put secondary. My question is, the real issue is the deed and the open space and the 24 or whatever amount of space that has to be agreed on. And that is where the town has leverage over a 40B development. And it seems to me that there could be a lot of litigation if the Board of Selectmen are not happy with the project as it is currently configured, and it would be probably in your interest to shrink the project and make the board happy and avoid the whole situation. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I would say, Peter, that's an accurate representation, so, Michael, you wanna wrap up some comments?
Yeah, I do. Peter said a lot of it. I think, just to give you an idea of what the process is before they can file a 40B application, they have to go to an organization like Mass Housing Partnership and go through their process. And before they do that, they have to have control of the land to which they would want to develop. And for that to happen, there has to be an agreement between the board and the developer and the landowner, I guess I should say in this case, as to what land is gonna be carved out for that A&R plan. So, to Peter's point, if you don't feel comfortable with the land that's being presented as being gifted to the town, you could not sign on to the A&R application, and it just wouldn't be filed.
And what would happen as a result of that, if that actually happened, what would happen?
Well, if we didn't file it, our position would be that, well, it's pretty clear in the regulations, like all interested parties in the property have to sign on to the application for it to be considered complete. I guess that could be litigated. And then once there's a resolution to that, then basically the A&R plan, if it was allowed to be filed, would be filed, and it'd have to go through that process, and then you'd have to go through the 40B
I'm not
process.
saying that that's what's gonna happen, but I just wanted to know what the process was.
Yeah, and I think to Peter's point, I think it makes sense for everybody involved to come to some agreement on what a good site plan is, so we don't have to go through all of this. So to that point, I wanted to ask Michael or Tom, would you be willing to look at removing some of the buildings? If we could look at maybe some things in our financial toolkit that we could utilize to maybe make it more palatable to the developer, like a waiver of building permit fees, or a portion of building permit fees, things of that nature. Is that something that you would be open to get a site plan that everybody would feel a little more comfortable with? That's really more a question for you.
I think that's pretty esoteric. We've had that discussion. We were waiting to get something from you, we didn't get it.
So interest on the board to pursue that avenue?
I mean, I think, we probably want to try to reach some sort of agreement, right? I mean, it sounds to me like you folks really can't move forward without, or it's going to be difficult for you to move forward without some sort of agreement from us. And I think we want to see a good plan and have that site developed, or what is the best alternative for development. And so I hope we can come to some sort of agreement.
So Michael, is it feasible for you to put together a concept that we can review and make it less esoteric?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we can do that and then allow the board to review it, and we can go from there.
Is there like certain buildings that you would like to remove? I know the ones I would.
Well, why don't you start there, all right? And then we can then it'll give us some framework to work with, all right?
If not remove, how about relocate within the site frame itself? So that way they're not losing their numbers.
Okay, so I think we should move on at this point. So, thank you for the presentation this evening.
I want to thank everybody for your time.
Yep,
Sure.
you're welcome. Thank you for the presentation.
And
All
my
right.
suggestion would be that you, Michael, and these guys should be talking about some details, I would think.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you to the residents for your comments as well. So, our next agenda item is the review of Select Board Town Manager Priority Projects.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, how did I get hurt?
You had your opportunity, you had an opportunity to come up.
been here one more and he was already standing alone.
After a half an hour of discussion, sir.
I'm sorry, but I think you should at least be allowed to be heard. You've been sitting here for over an hour and a half.
Well, you had your opportunity, sir.
It's all right, Steve. Anyone gets elected.
All right, moving on to the Town Manager Select Board Priority Project updates.
I think we covered the rail transit district.
You think?
Ad nauseum?
I think we have covered that. So, moving on, we'll move to downtown improvements. And actually had a more recent presentation from BSC that they gave to us, and I'll just go through that quickly. So you can kind of see visually what the
I don't know who it was. I think we just gotta remind people, if you wanna speak, stand up and wait, cause we don't know. Oh, no, you're right, you were fine.
You were right on.
You were fine.
You were right on. You asked people if they had questions, came up there. I don't know if he was snoozing or whatever.
I don't think I've heard the word esoteric at a board meeting yet.
That was used twice tonight. That was.
Was it
that
twice?
was pretty good.
Well, this will be a little bit lighter, folks, so.
With the presentation?
It was good seeing the updates for, gas main issue downtown today?
Yeah.
They were working on the gas main, right?
No, they were not working on the gas.
Oh, I thought they were.
There's a
No.
lot of people.
Oh.
Unfortunately, our water contractor kinda nicked
Nicked?
one of the, it wasn't the gas main, it's.
Okay, it was just, okay.
It's a smaller thing, so that got repaired. So again, like I said, I just wanted to give everybody an update of where we are with the downtown planning initiative. We've obviously been working on this since the summer, or actually the spring. I think everybody knows now what the limits are. We're looking at Main Street, really from Pine Hill Road all the way to the intersection of Summer and Homer. And then we're looking at Front Street from the intersection of Main Street over basically to the end of 125 Front Street. Just real quickly, since May 20th, we've done the preliminary easement plan, so there are takings along Main Street for the sidewalk. Most of those people have been we've had discussions with. They're open to that. In some cases, like with 128 Main, it's actually part of their decision. They did pavement probes. They've met with the fire department, Mr. Duca, about signals. They've done some additional survey work in regards to the culvert. We've met with Eversource in Keolis several times about the crossing in the quiet zone, and specifically how can we do a trail segment there.
Oh, great.
And then related specifically to the design, we looked at the pavement evaluation. We looked at things like geometry, the preliminary traffic signal, street light stuff, the trolley brook culvert coordination. Again, if we have an opportunity to improve that culvert, we want to take the opportunity to do it.
Yes.
Safety improvements at 30 to 50 Main Street. That is a section of the old mill building. Again, looking at the pedestrian crossing concept between Front and Homer, and then Main Street to the Farmers Market connection via the municipal lot. Been doing a lot of work with DPW and our conservation agent. Really, the landscape design is in play right now. We're looking at a mixture of all native trees. This is the stuff I really like. I know it's probably boring to everybody else, but the elms used to line Main Street, so we're looking at maybe recreating that, not to the same effect. Pin oaks, locusts, red maples, you'll see once we get to the plans, there's a lot of trees. Low ground cover plantings, again, we're placing those in strategic locations. Some of the proposed landscape elements, so we're talking about brick banding on the sidewalks, benches, really looking at some opportunities to create placemaking, and things like bike racks and trash receptacles, replacing the medians instead of concrete, having them as cobble, and then doing resin crosswalks, so you get that brick feature, but it's a little longer lasting. And then obviously some more period lighting. So just really quickly, this is Main Street from Pine Hill to Water Street. Again, it's more of the landscaping plan, and then calling out some specific drainage upgrades areas, and then ADA upgrades as well. Moving on from Water Street, past the corner spot. Again, you can see this main intersection with Pleasant Street is a really key intersection, and you have the cobble medians here. If you've ever tried to walk across here, one of the reasons it feels unsafe is because it's such a long distance. Mm-hmm. This gives you kind of a break and gives you a little bit more of a safer feeling. Obviously, a lot of trees are being replaced. We actually reduced the number of trees. There were trees all over the place. They must have did the research on me.
So real quick regarding trees, I just read something where it says that in urban areas, putting too many trees is actually not good for walkability, because it then, once they're grown, it keeps the pollution from your cars at the walking level.
Interesting.
So there's a debate as to how many trees you should have.
Well, we were kind of we thought it was going to be pretty dark.
Yeah,
once these things were fully grown. Again, continuing down Main Street, with these trees or replacements. This is the crosswalk across from the Federated Church in Ashland House. Again, we've had bump outs here. This will be, again, resin crosswalk. Again, to create a more safer feeling, obviously aesthetically a lot more pleasing. And then we're getting to the Main Street intersection here with Front. Again, same thing. So moving on in front of Lunkers and Stones. Again, more of the same. I do want to call your attention to this section of the sidewalk right here, we've been trying to figure out a way to incorporate part of the Upper Charles Trail section and at least bridge the bike lane that's gonna be going on Summer Street to the bike lane that's on Front Street. We tried some symmetrically funky things that Keolis wasn't really a fan of. So really, we're at the point where we're gonna allow bicycle on the sidewalk on this section, so to transition it that way, so we'll have the appropriate signage. Again, the intersections are really the key to any downtown streetscape, and so again, more of the same. You have this little safety island here, so people as they're crossing the street feel a little more comfortable. We really see Green Square and this section over here as really good opportunities for placemaking features for the community. Now moving on to Front Street, you know, we have ADA upgrades here. Again, a little bit more of the same in terms of plantings. We have a dedicated bike lane going both ways on Front Street. And more of the brick banding, things of that nature. And then-
Question?
Yeah.
Can you go back to the slide before?
Yeah.
So the parking right now at Sunnyside and the insurance building
Yeah.
is right from the street into their lots, in front of their buildings? What
Yeah.
is happening there?
So unfortunately, the owners were not willing to work with us on a parking plan, and that's their property, so they wanted to continue to keep the pull-in parking. So we'll have to have, you know, curb cuts, et cetera, for that section.
Okay. That's too bad.
It is too bad. This section here across from the library, this is where I believe there's a fountain that's pretty historic here in town. You know, it's shaded, it's got some pavers. You know, it's a little bit worn. We're looking at opportunities through this project to kind of revitalize and refresh that as well. And then again, we have curb extensions here to provide safety for pedestrians. A path, you know, connecting the sidewalk here to the sidewalk on Main Street. And I think that's pretty much it here. They did have all of these like there were probably twice as many trees here. We cut a few of them back. Hope you don't mind.
Michael, can you just go back to that one?
Yeah.
Is there no parking now along the side of the road, on the opposite side?
On this side?
Yes.
Only in front of the library.
Yeah, only in front of the library. And that's because we had some drainage issues, Joe.
Okay.
And to fix that, we basically had to keep parking from happening there.
Yep.
And so this should fix that.
Okay.
So we should be able to gain those parking spaces back.
And let me ask a question. I know you had said about bike racks and things like that. Is
Mhm.
that all throughout, like close to the farmer's market and that space as well?
Yeah, they'll be put on strategic locations. They're not called out here specifically.
Yeah, I was just curious because I think that would be good to have
As,
some.
Yeah.
as we're doing
Yeah.
this, is the Road Traffic Safety Committee at all looking at turning that parking lot into just one way? The municipal lot?
The signs are already there.
Only for half of it is one way, not the whole thing. You can still go in.
Short answer is no.
Okay.
Didn't really know that was kind of a concern, but we can certainly bring that up. So again, part of the project, really the big expense of this project is undergrounding. And undergrounding the utilities on both Main Street and Front Street, which also includes jacking under the tracks. That's actually a big component of the cost.
So we are actually going under the tracks?
We're gonna go under the tracks. Eversource is really adamant that we need to terminate it at the intersection of Summer Street, because if we terminate it before the tracks, we're just gonna have a whole litany of poles, additional poles than what are currently there now when we get to the other side. So we've had several meetings with them. They're continuing to work on their design. We have seen a preliminary design. It looks good. So we're hoping the design will be completed at 2020. Then we got to start working on the private access, and you know, as we're doing the streetscape work, we're going to be putting in, you know, chases and drops for specific connections for the private homeowners, and then we'll go back and do those.
How does that work, Mike? Like, who pays for that connection?
So the homeowner is technically responsible for it, but many communities, they end up paying for that.
So what do we do? What's the plan?
So we've got it budgeted for that. I mean, hopefully everything would come in under budget.
Is that for everybody, Michael, or businesses expected to? So something like let's say the mill building, where, they've got a big footprint, they've got a big electrical service.
Yes, and they actually have two, lines going in.
Right.
You can choose not to do that if you want to. We could establish that type of criteria.
Yeah, okay.
It's built within the budget, so if costs come in higher in one area, you might want to cut back on that area. There's a couple of things that we can look at doing.
And when you say, so their design is not gonna be finished until 2020,
Correct.
and we're doing our water main work now,
Yes.
and once our water main work done, is my understanding was we were then gonna start working on our streetscape.
So
But-
I'll get to the construction sequence.
Okay, thank you.
Because it has changed a little bit.
Okay, I don't want us putting stuff down and then having to dig it back up and,
No, I mean, we're gonna have to have a lot of temporary patching.
okay, that's fine.
So again, some of the undergrounding elements, electrical pads, the utility trenches. You can see these are huge vaults that they will put in. This is a typical electrical box vault. 8 by 10 by 8. I think they're going to do a 3 by 3 configuration on these conduits, but I don't know if you're really interested in this stuff. All right, let's talk about the anticipated schedule. So we're hoping to get the design, the engineering for the streetscape design and the undergrounding engineering and design completed at during fall of 2019. Not really sure if we're going to be able to do the undergrounding at that point in time, but that's our hope. So the streetscape project, we're looking at just the streetscape work being done in 2020, January 2020, get the bids in February, award the contract in March. And then after the frost in May, we'll start working on the streetscape construction. Continuing on and doing that. Then doing the undergrounding so actually the way I should probably do this is we'll do for the streetscape, we'll do the drainage first. So essentially the sides, the sidewalks, and the drainage elements on there, and the lighting and signal conduits. Then we'll be putting in the curbs, doing the driveways, the walks, the ADAs, and then the landscapes. We won't do the final paving until we get done with the undergrounding material, or the undergrounding pieces, and we'll just be using some temporary paving, and once we're done with the undergrounding, we'll go back and do the final pave.
So is the undergrounding not included in the lighting and signaling section?
He did not put it into this sequence of drawings. It is here under just the timeline, so the undergrounding project.
So if I understand this correctly, we're gonna have 75% of our streetscape completed before we even start the undergrounding. So the telephone poles are still gonna be there, and the utilities are still gonna be there while we're at 75% of our streetscape.
Yes, so like I said, we'll have the drainage, we'll have the sidewalks, we'll have the ADA improvements, we'll have the landscaping.
Well, according to this, 100% before the underground construction begins.
So,
yeah.
am I misunderstanding that we're gonna have the streetscape done with poles standing there, and then the poles are gonna go away and we're gonna have to fix stuff?
So the poles will probably be up until they'll definitely be up until everything is powered and we feel comfortable with everything.
So why are we, and if it's a budget thing, but why would we do 100% of our streetscape with the poles still standing there, knowing that we then have to go back and redo stuff once the poles are gone?
Because that's the way you have to do the construction sequence. And what they'll do is they'll pour the pads, pour the concrete pads around the poles. So when they cut those out, you don't have to replace the whole sidewalk or anything. You're just replacing a panel.
So we'll have a stump of a pole in the ground?
No, the pole will come out, but.
No, the pole will come out.
I'm saying this, what you said cut.
Yeah, I know, that was.
I'm sorry, but my ears are hearing these things, and I just want to.
Well, they're the new, there's the
It just
benches.
seems a little counterintuitive, that's all.
Yes, absolutely, but this is a function of the way Eversource does business and the way their timeframes work. Is that a reason?
Yeah, Eversource, it's been a little bit of a challenge getting We expected to have that design, we're a couple months behind, 2 or 3 months behind with Eversource.
So, am I misunderstanding when you were talking about the signaling, conduits for traffic, that was with traffic lights?
Yeah, traffic signals, the lighting for the streets, like the street lighting.
Okay, it was my understanding at our last traffic, committee meeting, that all the, new lights, downtown traffic signal lights, would be radio controlled?
Yes.
And there wouldn't be any,
But they have to be powered.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, so
So they
that's,
will be
that's just-
they will be cameraed.
Okay,
you know,
so
they
they
won't be
won't be,
using
they
the
won't be,
loop. They won't be using the loop.
generated.
Right.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So-
Can I ask
so-
one quick question on that page, real quick, to the town manager?
Go ahead, Mark.
It's gonna be quick. Did Eversource sign a right of way for this town yet? Because you got that up as they completed.
Yep.
Did they sign?
So it's the right-of-way permit for the MBTA. So they have to get a right-of-way permit to go underneath. So, and that can take a little while.
Cause I went to the Concom last time and I tried to ask that question and nobody answered.
So, just a quick question. So, two questions actually. One, so it looks like pretty much the majority of downtown will be dug up next summer. So from a timing standpoint, you're looking from May until pretty much till the ground freezes in November.
Yeah.
As sort of the timeline for when things are gonna be under construction for us. And then my other question is just from a budget perspective, is there anything that we're gonna need to go to town meeting for? Because this is kind of extending, so I didn't know if there was anything.
We don't think so at this
Okay.
point in time. I will say one of the things that we're looking at doing is applying for an ADA grant for some of the, to pay for the ADA upgrades, which would give us a little bit of, budgetary flexibility. You know, there's the opportunity to go for Complete Streets funds. I don't know if we wanna, go for that, and at least pay for part of it while we look at doing some
Certainly.
other Complete
We
Streets
should certainly
projects.
look at it, cause the next round of funding should be coming out, so we should look at what we've already done with our projects and do that, so maybe pull together the group that we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, that's how Framingham did a lot of their work downtown along 135, and the sidewalk was through the ADA funding on the federal level.
Yeah.
Got all that money for that. So.
I mean, it is a 2-year, and it's always been a 2-year
Right,
project.
right.
I just wanna, make that clear.
In regards to the undergrounding and slightly different subject, the quiet zone, right, I believe we finally got on the tip for the quiet zone?
Yep, we're on the tip.
In like 2024 or 25, or, I don't know exactly, but we can look at that.
It's not 2020, which is,
I know it's not
I
2020.
think, very unfortunate, because I don't know why that's,
It's such a small amount, you'd think.
well, and it's been designated for this project. It's not like it has to
So
go
we're not
through.
gonna be able to do the quiet zone.
While we're doing this project,
Oh.
unfortunately. Unless we
Well,
can do something
incorporate it.
where if they have some extra money for 1 year and we say, okay, can you pull this in? So
Exactly.
that would be something we should be advocating for as we go into the next tip round. Okay.
Exactly. Trying to think if there was something in, oh, yeah, we actually are gonna meet on the quiet zone tomorrow, I believe, so.
Oh,
You gonna be part of that meeting? So, okay, it's gonna be me and Doug.
okay. What time you doing that?
It's like 8:30, so probably Doug.
I was gonna say.
So, no, I won't be there.
Okay.
So hopefully this gives you a little bit more context of what, this is like the boring period where with any kind of project where you've gone through the hustle and bustle of getting something presented at town meeting and there's a lot of energy behind it, and then you pass it and then you gotta do the engineering, which is boring. I don't know about you, I kinda like seeing the water project happening because I kinda know something's going on.
And again, thank you to Jen for all your work with this project and all the RFPs and all that good stuff, so. good.
Thank you.
All right, next item is townwide strategic plan. Good, you actually have an update
There's
on that?
excitement in those faces. There's something.
You know, it's like baby steps.
Well, that's what it takes.
So we do have a draft of the housing section that we're gonna be distributing to the
Okay.
board soon. And then a couple of other sections that we hope to get. One is economic development, and I can't remember right off the top of my head what the other one is. And then I'm hoping to have the cultural and community character.
When you send us the draft of the housing section, can you just sort of send us the overview of the sections that you're planning to have in it? If you don't mind.
The 10.
Yeah, whatever, you know, the 10,
Yeah. So like where it fits in the bigger
Yes.
picture?
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, and then Warren District.
All right. So, let's see. Well, first, with regards to the Hall House, we've extended the RFP for a couple weeks for prospective bidders to come in to basically make an offer to restore that house. We also met last week with the architects for the Warren Barn. Unfortunately, the bids came in extremely high. They provided two options, one at 1.4 million and the other at 1.6 million.
Oh my gosh.
Now, this was pretty much a soup to nuts type of thing, and it went beyond just kind of recreating or restoring or building a replica of what the barn is. It had a few enhancements. So we're going to work on ways we can get that number down. Hopefully we'll get to a number that is comfortable for everybody and have them designed to that.
Do you mind me asking what were the enhancements that
Yeah,
they were
that's gonna be my
proposing?
question
Because
too.
that may be beneficial for us for use down the road.
So the first one that was really noticeable is the eastern side of the building was a lot of windows. So the architect had a vision of driving down Chestnut Street and seeing a lot of activity in the barn and seeing it all lit up, and you could see it as you're driving by. Obviously speaks to my heart, but not really practical for what we're trying to do. The second was a lot of the area was paved, for like the parking lot was paved. And that was one of the things that we were able to kind of think about removing right away. Either doing that with gravel or even doing that with grass and permeable pavers. So that was one thing we were able to kind of get through right away.
Crushed down just to give it that
Yeah.
whole flavor of old time.
So as the architects, who are they talking to, or how is this being decided as to what the use of that barn is going to be? Because if I hear that they've designed in windows, that would mean that they have one potential plan for this building, and I guess that's a discussion? I mean, are we looking to just replicate the barn to have a barn, or are we looking to create something there to make it usable for something, and what is that use?
We want to build something that is flexible.
Okay.
Right? So it's not going to have a lot of amenities, but it's not going to be built in a way that it precludes a lot of things that could happen in the future.
Yeah.
So one of the things that they had, one of the designs that they had was it was very, very bare bones, but it was almost like a little lecture type of seating. Didn't really have much in the way of bathrooms. The next one, which was a little bit more expensive, was you could use it as kind of like a reception hall. So if Framingham State wanted to use that as part of their wedding package, and then that had a lot of things like, additional bathrooms and things of that nature. I think we would want to look at something that would be rough plumbed for bathrooms.
Way back when we were considering the Valentine Barn and acquiring that through, at that time, the developer, and moving it and siting it at the Warren Woods across the street.
Right.
We had gotten some estimates for different levels of amenities.
Right.
So I think that's what we're actually looking for. Kind of basic with infrastructure in place, but not fully.
Yeah, I think what we want to do right now is get the shell built.
Right.
But you can't, the architect made a good point. It's really hard to build a shell when you kind of don't know what's going to be inside. So yeah.
But that's what a barn is.
Right, I think about the barn should be somewhat open space. I mean, yes, you wanna have it, availability to have electricity and stuff like that, but it's a big open area. right? And isn't the current, idea that we're looking to replicate what it looks like,
Yeah, the
From the
exterior is the most
outside,
important piece.
Yeah.
right? So,
It's more of an outside facade more than anything else
yeah.
than what's actually inside for its use.
But I could, it actually sounds nice having, I can appreciate having that glass as well.
Lisa, it
Right.
it speaks to my heart, but
Yeah, no,
it's,
I
just
would
don't think
agree,
it's that
so.
practical at this point in
All
time.
right. Very good. All right, we're gonna move on to old new business.
Didn't you have stuff on the, okay, never
Nope,
mind,
we did the
sorry.
consent agenda.
No, I
all
was
set.
thinking something else, but that's fine.
So we've already taken care of the discussion of the Eversource declaratory judgment. So review the guidelines for granting the select board recognition coins, the BS coin. So Yolanda, I'll turn this over to you.
Yep.
I assume everybody's had an opportunity to review this and as their,
Okay, I don't know
you
where
got it
that-
here.
Thank you.
Yep.
So, the idea was, so this is a coin that we would hand out to people. We had said that if someone is getting a proclamation, a coin would go out with that, and then we had some other guidelines. I think the real question was, how do we want to decide how these are granted? And based on the discussion at our last meeting, it felt like people felt like we could have two members sort of review it, say, okay, there's a subcommittee and someone says, okay, I think we should give a coin for this reason, and it goes to that subcommittee. That was the feeling that I got from people, that they felt that was better than all of us walking around with coins in our pocket and just sort of handing them out. So I think for tonight, what I would like to present, based on everyone's feedback, is as we get ready to do this, we create a two-member subcommittee of the select board and have them decide based on our input as to who should get coins. But with the guideline of, if a proclamation is being presented, it doesn't have to be asked. The proclamation is presented, and when the proclamation gets presented, the coin gets presented at the same time.
Right.
It's more some of these other ones, or, something special happens and someone goes, you know what, I really think that this person should get a coin based on what they've done, or, someone's longevity, or, very out of the ordinary
Right.
thing.
Good.
So, that's my recommendation.
All right, so, I agree. I think the proper way to do this certainly is publicly rather than just handing them out. Right now, I think the only coins that we've distributed are to Eagle Scouts.
Yes.
Yep.
And hopefully there'll be many more to hand out as time goes on, but there's a lot of other good reasons. We're gonna start to get into the holiday season,
Right.
the recognition events for town staff and so on. I think it would be important for us. So, I guess the first order of business, I think, is to adopt this as a board policy. So if somebody wants to make a motion to do so, why don't you make the
Sure.
motion? And
I move that we create this policy guidelines for granting select board recognition coins as presented.
So, a point of order, Mr. Chair,
yes.
where this is gonna become a policy, we don't usually vote on policies on the first night that it's been presented.
It was presented
Presented
before.
the last board meeting.
This is our second presentation of this.
Yeah.
Don't remember I remember being discussed, but I don't remember this being actually discussed.
We discussed it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, if Joe wants to.
I mean, if you wanna wait for a
No,
meeting.
I'm just bringing
you
a point of
know,
order.
just,
That's,
yeah.
but
I mean, we did,
I think the only change was, because I have the note from the last meeting, was that we didn't talk about a specific subcommittee, but we talked about two members of the board talking
Right.
about, so.
okay.
And
So you
because
still
it's
have
two
to follow
members,
the
it has
same
to be a
rules
subcommittee.
yeah.
As
Yeah.
for open meeting laws
Right.
and all that,
Yeah, it'd be a subcommittee and,
Okay.
yes.
All right.
All
Wanna
right.
get over that I think it's fine as it stands.
Okay. All right, so as presented, so we have a motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, we've got a second. Any other discussion? If none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? And that passes 5-0. And then we need to establish a subcommittee. And to be clear, this is a subcommittee that needs to comply with open meeting laws and public records requirements. So meeting postings and so on. So I would entertain anyone who would be interested in participating on this subcommittee.
I would like to.
So we've got a volunteer here.
I would as well, unless someone else really wants to.
No.
Rob, you and I are stuck with
Yeah,
our
that's right,
subcommittee
we got our-
already, so I hear Yolanda and Brandy have volunteered, so.
Second.
So I move that we appoint Brandy and Yolanda to the recognition coin, the BS coin subcommittee.
All right. I'll second that.
I'm glad we can.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And all those opposed, 0. That passes 5-0, so that's great. Good.
Have that back.
Yep, thank you.
And thank you for doing the work and getting that draft.
Oh, very good. So,
Not a problem.
now we've got quite an inventory, so I think we can, and I think
Quite an
there's a lot of good work out there
Yep.
to,
Well, we have Ashland Day coming up, so that'll be
Yeah.
a couple right there, and
that's right.
Yeah.
So I think we have a commentary from Mr. Peterson. We're talking about coins here, we're not talking about stormwater, just to be clear.
No problem. Just as, inside joke, but anyway.
That's,
you threw him off.
Not inside anymore, so-
That's what happened to me when he.
It's okay. Just as a point of information, the board will be getting invitations for 3 more Eagle Course
oh,
of
that's
Oh,
Honor.
wow.
awesome. That's great.
Cool.
Just so you get an advance warning.
Yeah.
That's it.
It's a, you know, Skip, it's
That's
amazing,
great.
that troop, the amount of
Unreal.
Eagle Scouts you guys are putting
Yep.
out, so,
Well, we just had a presentation at the town forest for.
Yep.
right.
The people at
I'm
home
not-
wanna hear you.
I'm not used to microphones, and I'm not used to standing in front of one either. To celebrate the completion of 3
Yeah.
Eagle Scout projects they did.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Bridges at the town forest.
Yep.
With Rob St. Germain and Kathy Rooney.
Yep.
And there was a ribbon cutting ceremony up there, so
Sorry,
I
I
don't know
missed
if
that one.
It was a nice
Yeah.
event. I was there, Joe was
Yeah.
there,
Brandy
Brandy
was
was
there.
there.
Thank you
And,
for representing
yeah,
us.
Joe trucked all the way up from the parking lot there,
Yeah,
so.
he certainly
very
did.
good.
And trucked all the way back, too.
wait
It
a
was
second.
good.
Got your exercise in that day.
Just thankful there weren't any yoga classes going on.
Were you out of breath when you got there too?
Oh, you better believe it in that, so.
Oh, and I just, while Skip's here, I do, I had the honor of attending your son's Eagle Scout ceremony in 19. Well, yeah, we won't say how long ago. How's he doing these days? Good, yeah, so that was, and my first term on the board, and I remember that, so.
Was that back in the 90s?
It would've been 1998 or so?
Wow.
97?
94.
94, sorry.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Boy.
Yeah, there you go, so,
He now has a 4-month-old daughter of his own.
good.
Oh,
That's great. That's crazy.
Very nice.
Very good.
45 years ago.
Congratulations.
What was he, 15?
Just means I'm getting.
It wasn't 45 years
45 years
We're
ago.
all on. All right, next item is the mission vision statement revision. We've talked about this, and we need to consider dates for a workshop meeting just to review that. And again, this is.
That's early October for you folks.
Yeah, October would be, I think, a target, and we're probably talking, an evening meeting, hour and a half, 2 hours. It shouldn't take us too long to review this, so, any potential dates for folks that
You'd
that seem to
suggest,
work?
is that you suggesting the 30th?
We haven't suggested anything yet, so if you wanna take
I
a.
see a note in here, it says note.
Halloween.
Yeah, that's Halloween, yeah, no.
No, it's not. Halloween is the
31st.
Oh,
31st.
the 31st, that's right.
So we have, we meet on the.
Monday's the 30th.
On the
Second and the
second, the
16th.
16th. We can meet any evening that's convenient. We'll meet downstairs and, we can meet in meeting room A and work through it, so.
On my calendar, the week of the 7th through the 11th is completely wide open.
Is wide open, okay. I have something on the 9th, but that's Yom Kippur, so we're not gonna meet on
okay.
Wednesday, but we can meet,
Are you talking
think-
about the week of the
Is that push hour
October
meeting?
7th. No.
no,
No,
okay.
'cause we're on
no,
the
but
second
we,
and
we can
16th,
meet
right?
on Thursday the 10th, Tuesday the 8th.
10th works for me.
I
10th?
think the 10th is good.
10th is good?
works.
All
My
right.
only, have the auditors in, but I generally don't do, hopefully I won't have to work late that day.
You get audited a lot, Rob.
Huh?
You get audited a lot.
Yeah, there's always somebody interested. I don't know what the heck.
I could say that that's the date that the brewery's gonna be down at the corner spot. We could
Oh,
go, you know,
definitely,
go-
oh.
go
Go
there.
there afterwards, Randy.
Go there afterwards.
All right, or before.
Or
All right, so we're talking about,
What
open-
time?
Open meeting at the.
What
at the
time are we
corner spot.
thinking?
So,
7 or-
well, let's see what
So we talk
Rob
about the
can work
10th?
with.
7's fine. Yeah, that's
7?
great,
Okay.
yeah.
So
if-
we'll do
unless
7.
you guys, yeah.
All right, to
My mind.
accommodate,
I don't care.
all right, it must be getting late, because we're getting a little
Punchy.
loose. All right, so we're going to 10:10 at 7 PM.
Motion to go past 10 o'clock.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, good catch. All right, next item is an update on the National Citizen Survey.
So, we're doing, thank you. We're doing the, National Citizen Survey. Again, this will be our second time. 3 years ago, we did the baseline survey. Notifications for the households that were randomly selected should go out, at the end of this week and be received early next week, and then they'll open up, the survey. All of it will be done online. And so you'll be given the link and you can go in, fill out the survey. We tried to streamline it a little bit. It will still be pretty long, but you know, we had a hard time cutting out questions because we found them all very useful.
Yeah.
So if you get selected and you have any issues with access to computers, obviously you can use the community center or the library. The last time we were also able to walk people through the survey if they had any issues, and we'll be able to do that again, so they can just contact me. My contact information will be on the card, and we can set up, either I can walk them through it or we can set up an appointment. We have folks at the community center that are willing to do that as well. And so
Sure.
you can just do it over the phone, and we go through the process just to sort of help people through that. And then 2 weeks into the process, we'll open up an opt-in. So if you don't receive a card but you want to tell us what you think, we'll be collecting that, and they just do it separate, so that you don't accidentally do the opt-in if
Right.
you were.
So people will receive a postcard if they've been randomly selected.
They will, and then they'll receive 2 to 3 reminders. So we
Okay.
won't know because it's anonymous. We won't know if you've actually participated, and that really did sort of annoy people. Like, I already filled this out, I keep getting it, but we don't know. So
We don't
they
know
all
who has
go
filled
out
it out.
Yeah.
as a
Okay.
mailing.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the time frame for the people to complete it?
It's
For-
about 4 weeks we'll
4
have
weeks.
it open, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's so important.
It really is. I
It's-
encourage anyone who's listening or watching at a later date to, if you get a postcard, please participate. It gives us great, valuable information. The last citizens survey was terrific. We had a great reply rate, and that's very important as well. And then I encourage people to opt in as well. So if you don't get the postcard, the official postcard, opt in and give us feedback. It's really very enlightening as to how our demographics have changed and what people are looking for that are different demographics than, right?
Question in regards to the timing, so the postcards are going out. Are we at a point where we could put something in local pages for their October issue so that they could be mentioned that if you didn't get a postcard and you wanna participate, here's the website to go to?
I think we might be able to. I'll look into that tomorrow.
Cause I think their deadline is like the 15th or
Soon.
so
It
of
is, yeah.
September,
Yeah.
so if we could get it in the paper so that when people get that paper in October, they could still participate, right? Cause that's still timing wise?
Yeah, it should be, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so they'll do a baseline comparison to our data, and that's the other reason why it was difficult to cut out any questions. So they'll do an analysis to our baseline data from 3 years ago, as well as they'll do a comparison to other communities that have taken the survey nationwide. So there will be some questions that we tried to sort of tweak a bit to reflect our community, but it is hard because they do a comparison
Sure.
for the whole country.
Yeah.
What point do we get the results?
So we'll have a draft report by mid-November.
Oh,
So they
okay.
do it
That's quick.
relatively quick.
Yeah.
And last time we asked them to do some additional analysis that did take some time. We had them look at some demographic. We had them do a sort of a cross-section analysis of our demographics because there seemed to be some differences in the way people were responding, and so that took several months after, but they do give us an initial draft report report within a month or two of them finishing, so.
Good, thank you. Another area of your
Expertise.
workload and expertise, so thank
Yes,
you
thank you.
again, Jen. Next item, and I'm gonna let Yolanda speak to this. This is a discussion on having a member of the board run for a 3-year seat for the Metropolitan Planning Organization, the MPO, so.
So
Yolanda?
just a little history, MPO is the organization that reviews and votes on funding for state dollars as well as federal dollars. So when you hear about the TIP, the MPO is the organization. It's like 24 or 25 members board. It is split out in various ways. So it has town representation. So last year, our town seat was available, and Arlington is our representative from a town perspective. And there's also cities, then there's inner core, there's outer core. Currently, the seats that are up are for, under the MAPC, 101 cities and towns. They have various districts. So we are part of the Metro West Regional Collaborative, which is an MAPC. So that 9-member community, that seat is up to be representation on the MPO, as well as the Magic and all the different subdivisions, sub-regions. The last, I don't know how many years, certainly as long as I've been a member here, the seat has been held by Framingham. And the representative was Dennis Giambetti. And I know various times when I first got on the board, he was a member of their Board of Selectmen. Even when he then stepped down from the Board of Selectmen, he maintained being our representative. Then when, so he's been the representative. Framingham has had the seat, and Dennis has been our representative. We felt very confident that our region was well represented by Dennis. Framingham, who currently has the seat, made a change in who is representing the region. So Dennis is no longer our representative. So I, in speaking with Michael and with other people in the region, we thought that it might be good for Ashland to go for the MPO seat. And because of my interest, and I've gone to various MPO meetings, I am offering to then be our representative. We as a board would have to vote to go for the seat. Steve would actually be the representative, but he could appoint me as the representative because he's the chief elected. And then what would happen is every year, as our chair changes, the chief elected would change, but we could appoint, if we win the seat for 3 years, and even if I weren't on the Board of Selectmen anymore, I could still be our representative to the MPO, if that is what the board decides. Then the other part of that is we would have to go to the other 8 communities within our region to get their support, as well as reach out to communities outside of our region to see if they'd be willing to support Ashland and me representing our region at the MPO level. I've already started reaching out to a few people before this meeting just to sort of get the feel. I've spoken to someone at MAPC who is part of managing this. I've spoken to Natick officials, and I'm going to be reaching out to Holliston and Southborough and Marlborough within the next couple of weeks.
Good. So what's the timeline for this process?
So nominations are due by October 4th, and then the election happens, I forget the exact date, in October.
Okay. So tonight, we need to support Ashland being elected to
Correct.
hold the seats.
So we need to support Ashland nominating themselves for the
For the
MPO
seat,
seat
okay.
for our region.
And it would have to be under Steve's name, and then Steve could.
Right.
Okay.
What I would recommend is, as a board, we approve Ashland to run. Steve is our elected official, but he would be appointing me
All right. So
as the representative.
He's the chief elected.
So
Because
what-
he's the chief elected.
What process do we need to do?
I think it's-
At this point, we're gonna, assume we're gonna support a motion to nominate Ashland
To run
to
for
a
the
seat,
seat,
an
on
open
the-
seat,
yeah,
right?
the MPO seat for our
And then what
region.
happens? What do we need to do in between now and then?
It's as you're if you have people in other regions that you know, start talking to them, let them know that we're looking to run for that we are running, that we've decided to get nomination. You know, we may reach out to Millis, Medford, some of these other communities that we have relationships with, Hopkinton. So it's not just within our region, but if we can get outside of our region support, we have to actually get 4 signatures on the nomination papers. And each community can only support one other community. So, you know, if we get a support from Holliston, they then can't support someone else to run for the MPO.
Any sense of
Quite a
who
project.
is going, who's running? We're assuming that Framingham will run again.
Well, it's interesting, Michael got an email from Framingham reaching out to him which they're looking to have a discussion about who should represent the Metro West Regional Collaborative, and they reached out to the leaders of the Metro West region, and I was a little surprised as I'm in my 2nd year of chair of the regional collaborative, and I was not reached out to be part of that discussion. You know, and they just may not have thought it was necessary, I don't know, so.
Yeah, I think they weren't looking at the Metro West Regional Collaborative, Yolanda. I think they were
That's
just
possible.
looking at like the managers and
Right.
administrators.
Right.
So,
Who are not
Is
elected
it-
officials.
Who are not, right, who
Exactly.
in most of the, are not elected, so they're not the, yeah.
That's the mayor.
Natick is
They-
part
it's
of our region.
Okay, so we have a contact there that we can
Yeah.
utilize.
Yeah,
Okay.
so.
All right. Any other discussion
No, I
on
think that's
this?
great.
Okay.
Thanks,
so-
Yolanda, for doing all this
Thank you.
work. I mean,
You're welcome.
So-
and you've certainly been involved in this
Yep.
stuff, so.
So let's entertain a motion that the board support an Ashland nomination for an open seat
On the
on
MPO.
the MPO.
I'll second that as a motion.
Okay, so
Motion
motion was
been
made
made,
and seconded
Yeah.
very
good.
efficiently.
Yes.
So any other discussion? If none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and all those opposed, and that carries 5-0.
So now we just need to go do some
And-
legwork.
Now we just
Yep.
need to get her
Okay.
elected. Right,
Yeah.
so,
They've been
Okay, very
organizing.
good.
thank you for the support.
Yep.
I think it would be good for our region
I
to
think
have.
it'd be good for, yeah,
I think so
Sure.
too.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You know.
I agree.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, so the next item on our agenda is open the BAA Fall Grants. This is really just a notice that the grant program is now open,
All right.
September the 4th, and we will be accepting applications through October the 4th, at which point our subcommittee will meet and we will make recommendations to the full board for distribution in probably either the middle of the second meeting in October or the first meeting in November, so.
And with the help of Susan Roby running
Yes.
the show.
Yes, so send in your grant applications. At this point, I don't have the dollars available. We have guidelines in terms of the amount of money we distribute in each round. We'll be, again, complying with those guidelines. So at some point, you can send, well, actually, it's just as easy, when we have the applications in hand, send an update of the balances, and then we can pursue it from there, so. All right, thank you, appreciate it. Next item is a update on the triple E situation.
Triple E, Eastern Equine Encephalitis. So, I think this is something that really kind of emerged as a real significant public health issue, I think, 3 or 4 weeks ago. Triple E is a pretty serious disease in terms of the ramifications and the consequences if you do contract it. It is fairly rare, but again, it can be fatal, I think, in 60% of the cases. Mass DPH has been working with a lot of communities where they test in the mosquito control districts they call it surveillance, to find where there are mosquitoes that are infected with triple E. Unfortunately, we have had 4 human cases of triple E, a couple in the South Shore, 1 here in Metro West, and then 1 actually in Franklin County, and then actually a number of animals. Because of a lot of this, Mass DPH has raised what they call our risk level for Tripoli to high. I've asked Mark Orm, who is the health director and Board of Health, they met last week, to put together a plan as to what they want to do, or what they're going to do with this risk level at high, and how is that going to impact outdoor events, and how is it going to impact, athletics. It's having a big toll on the athletic programs in the region. And then also to look at, if we do get moved to critical, what kind of plan will we put in place at that point in time? And so they did go through that. The Board of Health at this point in time is recommending that on all town-owned property, the all town events end at basically at dusk. And that, as you know, that time gets earlier the further into the year we get. So that timeline is shifting. One of the things we're trying to do is we're trying to, I think, consolidate our information in our communications. So Jen has worked with Mark to put together, from now on, at least until this crisis is averted, I don't know if it's really a crisis, but a public health emergency is averted or has diminished, we'll be issuing situational awareness reports. Hopefully that's fairly comprehensive, and it will give indications of how you can protect yourself from Tripoli and what kind of impact it's going to have to town-wide events and athletics. So it really is unfortunate because it's had an impact on some town events. We've had to cancel a couple movie nights. We've had to cancel a concert or two, and they will continue doing surveillance until they feel. I don't think they have a hard frost. Yeah.
Would the risk level ever come down before a frost? Like at this point?
I don't think so. Based on the information that Mark received, I don't think what they are basically saying is that as it gets cooler out, mosquitoes may get less active, but it's harder to monitor a survey, and so they will probably keep the risk levels. They may do that, and that's why. So each week, hopefully on Monday or at the very latest Tuesday, depending on or as we get more information, the news flash section of the website will be updated with a new situational awareness statement. Additionally, we have been trying to create email groups for people who may be doing planning for outside events, and so those are going direct email. It's the same exact information, but just sort of reminding them, because we lose about 15 minutes from dusk to dawn every week at this time of year, and so there's a calendar, and so each week we'll change the time, so people just sort of keeping it at front of mind as people plan. Okay. And so DPH has given us a calendar for times for dusk and dawn straight through Halloween, and obviously after the hard frost is when the risk diminishes.
Okay.
Good. Very
What
good.
about any updates on control procedures? Was the spraying seen as successful?
Well, they did get a lot of the area sprayed that they wanted to spray. It took a little while because temperatures kept on getting cooler than what was going to be effective.
So typically, ideal, they would do one aerial spray, and then 2 to 3 weeks later, they would come back and do it again. I think, given where we are for temperatures, I don't know that they'll be able to do that, and so they will let us know if that's going to be. But right now, they basically told us it's complete, and they're surveying mosquitoes.
So there's no more significant control procedures, probably. I thought
not
it were
planned.
From what I've observed, it seemed to be effective. I noticed a kind of a drop in mosquitoes. I wasn't supposed
Hopefully
to be
you're not
out
testing.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you're out there, and I was feeling a lot in the yard, and it seems to be a little better now. So.
And there's some members of the community that questioned, whether you're taking such a broad brush approach like spraying was the right way to go for environmental and ecological reasons. And I have to say that Mass DPH and Mass Department of Agriculture, they realize that we can't spray our way out of this situation on a continual basis. This was just a last resort. This is not something that they want to do on a regular basis.
And there was a fair amount of information out about the effects of spraying, but people were.
Oh gosh, there was a lot of information out. There was a lot of information on the planes that were flying.
Santa's
Even
coming
where they
to
were?
us. Where they
Yeah.
were. All right, thank you for the update. Next, and last item on old new business is the Valentine Property Reuse Committee discuss the charge, the appointments to the committees. So, Michael, you want to review that?
Sure. So this emerged out of the forum that Mr. Foster hosted probably about a month ago now. Actually, it was a little more than a month ago. The board, in a subsequent board meeting, decided the best way to go would be to form a committee to evaluate proposals for the adaptive reuse of the building. So Mr. Foster has put together this charge, and it's not too lengthy, but really the committee will be charged with attending scheduled meetings, working to develop interest in the property from targeted proposers. Basically, if you have somebody that you think should be interested in submitting a proposal, encouraging them to do that. We can't help them. Most important thing is to evaluate the proposals as they come in and then make a recommendation of the best and most feasible proposal to the select board and town meeting for appropriate action. Committee will consist of 7 to 9 citizens at large. The project manager and the town manager or designee. I promise it won't be Jen. And then once the recommendation has been accepted by the select board, committee's charge will be completed, or you can revise the scope.
Right.
We did receive a number of people who were interested in serving on this committee. Susan you requested a couple weeks ago for talent bank forms.
Yeah, we have 9 interested.
So we do have 9 interested. We have 6 that have actually sent in their talent bank forms. So I don't know if you want to go ahead and approve those members to be part of the committee, and then wait for the 2, or if you just want to wait until everybody has submitted their talent bank forms. And
Well, the first thing is, this is the first time we've looked at this
Right.
charge. We gave direction as to what we were looking for. Is the board comfortable with at least approving
Looks
this
good.
charge?
Yeah.
And moving forward with that? And consequently, we had a great representation of folks at that forum that wanted to participate.
Right.
And, my own feeling is, we've been provided with what we asked for, and we've got interested volunteers. I would suggest that we move forward with this.
Yeah, I think, to your point, Steve, even though this is the first time we've seen the charge in writing, I think it was well discussed and we stated what we thought. So I would feel comfortable approving this
So
and
that,
approving the names on the list. And then I would, the only thing that would change that is if we find out that some of the people haven't submitted their talent bank forms, and if we need to then remove them, but
One right now.
that's
One
left.
came in tonight.
Oh,
oh,
okay.
it did?
One came in tonight,
Okay.
I think there's only one that's missing and that person's.
So we can condition it, approve
Or
everybody
approval.
that's brought in a talent bank form and subject to any
So-
additional from this list.
Right.
So the 2 that were waiting, you said one was already, had submitted it tonight?
The list that you have in there
Yep.
is the
Shows 2
updated
people
list.
waiting.
Right.
Okay, shows
Yeah.
us waiting for 2.
This still shows 2. So, and just so the names of people, it includes Cedric Bacon, Kenneth Bowker, Judith,
Judson.
Judson.
Judith Jensen, Margie Gassel, Scott LaBelle, Nadine Nesbitt, Susie Scher, and James Zabrowski.
He's not, you didn't have Judson on yours, right?
Judson.
I don't have Judson.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's the one
Judson
that came
DeCruz.
in after.
Oh,
I
okay.
had given you your stuff.
Oh, because
Theirs
this
has
is,
Judson on
it says received. It says Cedric Bacon is waiting, and Scott
Lovell.
LaBelle.
Right, so we have 2 that we're waiting on.
Okay.
I
Okay.
misspoke.
All right.
Okay.
All right, so we'll need a motion to accept the charge and then a motion to
So
accept the.
they work on making, with all the proposals that come in, they select the proposal that they feel is best suited, and they come to us for.
I'll make a recommendation
Recommendation,
to the board and then
Okay.
subsequently to town meeting.
Okay.
I move that we approve the charge of the Valentine Property Reuse Committee and appoint the members that Michael listed. And the project manager and the town manager or his designee.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion?
The question I have, quick question, is there a time frame at all that is gonna be included in this, as far as, is it sort of open-ended?
It is open
Completion.
usually
Yeah.
until completion.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would, the only comment I would make, Susan, is just to manage the two folks that we're appointing, but we don't have their forms yet.
So you did not appoint them. I took their names off because Michael didn't read those two.
Yes, you
right?
did.
Yes.
Thought he read everything.
He read them,
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
So leave them on, but
So it's 9
we
people.
just confirm that we've got them before the first time they meet.
Right. And if things change in the meantime and they opt not to, then we
Yeah.
can.
Right.
That's right. So we have a motion, we have a second, we've discussed. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And that carries 5-0.
I just have one question. Is this the kind of thing where the committee might put out a formal request for proposals?
Oh, no,
Okay.
we'll
Okay,
definitely put
okay,
out
that's
a
what I- okay,
formal
just
request.
checking. That's what I thought, but I'm like, it wasn't said, so,
They do the
okay.
review.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to town manager report, including but not limited to the status of the MWRA connection.
I do not have an update. I thought we would have a legislative update on that
Okay.
by now, and we do not.
So we'll carry that over to the next meeting, right?
And I don't have anything else.
Okay, very good. So we're moving on to board reports. We'll start
Me?
with Joe.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not a whole heck of a lot to report, other than the fact that I would just like to thank all the residents of Ashland who supported the Ashland Day corn sales that were up at the Lucky Farms. We had a very, very profitable year. We sold over 1,400 ears of corn.
Wow.
It's
lot of corn.
nuts.
That's a lot of corn.
It's a lot of corn. It was absolutely crazy, but, so I'd like to thank, Pi, the owner of Lucky Farms, for allowing us to do it. He thought it was great, more people came into his establishment, so it helped him, it helped us. So we're very grateful of that. And, because of the Triple E scare and notice that were given to everybody, we canceled the last couple of summer movie nights, family movie nights. We thought it was the best thing. Safety comes first for our citizens. And so we realized that, and we'd like to thank all those who participated again and joined in on the festivities. I'd like to thank Liz Childress, Regina Gemmer, and Donna Mignani for their volunteering all their time and hours, putting that night on, and for keeping the pavilion open and the bathrooms clean and neat for everybody to utilize throughout the summer months. And the school is back in session, so everybody please use care and caution as they go to school or go to work. Take a little time, get to work a little earlier than necessary, leave earlier than necessary, because of all the construction. There's been some people who have lost some patience while they're waiting in line, and today was a pure, it was absolutely incredible, the number of people who were not happy with having to be in line. But when you have job construction going on, and it's an inconvenience, we all understand that, but you're not the only one. There are many, many other people who are affected by it as well. So just be patient.
Right.
And I know that they're starting their work as of 8:30 tomorrow morning instead of 7, which actually they should have been doing that right from the get-go,
That's good.
especially when school started.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that will help alleviate some of the traffic tie-ups from the last day or two. So other than that, I would just like to wish my wife a happy 38th anniversary.
Yes.
We survived it, we've done it. God bless you, kid.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to
and all I
concur
can
with
say-
that one.
And all I can say is this: I have to look up to heaven to my mother and say, "Ma, we're still there. We're still doing it. God bless you." Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Very good. Thank you, Joe. Yolanda?
I just have one thing, a reminder, the ice cream scavenger hunt that has been going on. If you knew about it, you got your cones at either Dairy Queen or Tasty Treat, and then there was 10 different restaurants that you could go to pick up your flavors, and the celebration to finish that up and get your coupon for a cone if you got all your scoops is happening on Friday at the corner spot. I forget the exact times, but you can check the corner spot and you can do it there. And then WACA movie night, their last movie night was also canceled because of the mosquito issues. And I know that they're going to be doing something inside, probably at the VFW in the winter
Nice.
to make up for that.
Nice.
So,
Good. And just a clarification, it's Murphy's Ice Cream. A
Murphy's.
Farmer tasty treat.
Former tasty treat.
I just wanted
yes.
to make sure, because Sean will probably.
Yes,
what tasty
Murphy's.
treat? Yeah.
I've heard,
Murphy's.
I've heard the mini golf is open now.
It is.
It is.
open. Yes,
It is open. It
So-
opened over the weekend.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's Murphy's. You're right.
Very good.
I should know. I was there.
Rob?
Someone gonna talk about the Dragonfly Festival?
Oh, yeah.
'Cause- Okay, so, don't wanna forget
You
that
can-
one.
you can
That,
talk about
well,
it again.
I'm
That's
looking
okay.
forward to going to it, so. A couple quick items, I did have that meeting with the Rodman, Road folks. It was really, whether you agree with all their issues, they're very committed to their neighborhood, and I think, of course, we all support, this is a residential community, and we support people, and concerns about their homes. And I said, and I'm sure we all feel that way, and I suggested, I gave them some suggestions about the process, and I hope it's working out for them, and, people are being responsive to their concerns. One thing I noticed when I was there, that house on the corner, and that was the same, so the corner of Rodman and and he was the same, if I'm not mistaken, the same guy that came to us about the number of cars he was selling, was that him?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And that house is
Should be condemned.
yeah, I think, I would suggest or ask that the building inspector take a look at that. You go into that neighborhood, it's very nice, except that house in the corner, to me, it looks like it has, enforcement, there should be some kind of issues there. It's just, and that's really at the border of our town. So, anyway, but, I would hope that we'd be able to move on that and remind him next time he's coming to see us for permits, like the quality of the property's running, but anyway. Couple other things on Eversource,
Excuse me.
just what the thing I still think we need to keep in mind, and depending on what happens with the decision, is that if we need to get expert witnesses to reapproach that whole concept, depending on what we decide to do, in terms of challenging the Eversource analysis of the need for the pipe. So just think we should keep that in mind. We talked to Elizabeth Stanton some time ago, and there's other groups too. So I would just ask that people keep that in mind, and maybe we get it pro bono, or maybe we have to put up some money for it, but, at this point, I think it'd probably be worth it. The other thing is that I've been in touch with our legislative offices about this whole, if you recall, that there is some requirement for legislation being passed for them to go through the state park. And so I'm not up on all the details, but they have to get the approval. The governor has to, I believe, put in some kind of legislation, and it has to be approved by the legislature, this chapter 90, this chapter whatever, property, state conservation land to be used. So that's what I've asked, them to be, Jack to be aware of, and Susan, I talked to Susan Nickel, Senator Spilka's office, and they're looking into it, like, and I basically made the point that this town, through this body, has officially taken the position that this project should not be approved until all the, till the better information or a better plan has been put together. And so that it doesn't make sense in that case for the legislature, our representatives, to pass legislation basically enabling this thing. So I've asked them to look into that, and I'll keep people updated as to what happens. Yeah. No, it needs, if you look through DCR made this whole deal with the land swap. Do you remember that one?
It's like in Longmeadow or something, there's like Spring.
Mohawk State Forest, they're gonna get a parking lot from Eversource. That's the deal. Yeah. So, but, so anyway, I think there's some legislation that is required for them to do that, so.
Okay, good. Thanks for that update.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
And then we did get some emails. I got that email on the tennis courts. I don't know if people read that. So
Yeah.
I've played there myself recently, and it is in fairly bad shape. But I was wondering, and I realized I don't know who's responsible for that. Is that a school?
It's really the school
It's still the schools, but it's not our facilities person?
We'll
Okay.
see, our facilities
is.
person is the school's facility.
But it's not part of this whole plan with the athletic fields, or is it?
No, we don't have a plan really for
No.
the athletic fields that has been updated, but it does need to be updated. I don't know when we'll be able to do that, quite
Yeah.
frankly.
So they made some good points about the condition of the
No, it's-
courts.
oh,
Yeah.
very
So anyway.
Very good.
Yeah, and, yeah, I think that's, we got that, the only other thing I wanted to mention, we got that email on the school funding. Did you get a chance to look at that? Quite interesting, quite complicated. I really, I'll have to go back to it later. But I don't know if other people had thoughts on that funding issue that, saying that Ashland was losing millions of dollars and, I don't know.
Well, that had to do with the Promise Act, if
Yeah.
that gets initiated, so that,
If
that
it
was
gets
Jim's, that's
initiated,
right, if
yeah.
it does.
If it, okay.
So I think there's still, a lot of discussion, I'm sure, and
Yeah, so
arguments
there's-
and back room arm twistings and
Yeah.
so on before that,
Yeah, so, they're asking for support from us. I don't know if that's something we should put on our agenda to follow up with, or, if we see that we have a role in pushing that, or,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I think the way it was, and you're referring to the email that Jim Adams sent out with an analysis?
No, there was a
No,
whole.
there was an email that it was
addressed to you.
directed, interestingly.
YouTube.
You and I were directly noted, like it spoke to us specifically.
Yep.
It was a gentleman from,
Need to get that fixed tomorrow.
Did you get something?
No, nothing.
Oh.
I forget, it was a gentleman
it was
from
a
another
reg-
town, and he
I didn't
forwarded the
recognize
email.
the school district, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was
He
a
wasn't
region,
from-
it
he
was a
wasn't from
regional.
Ashland.
That to me?
Yeah, I'll
I'm
forward it to
having
you.
a problem with my town email
Oh.
address, so
Okay, yeah.
you could forward that.
Yeah, I'll
to me.
forward that to
Sure,
you.
that's great. Good, thanks
All right,
for
thanks.
those
That's-
updates.
That's it, yep.
Okay, Brandy.
I'm gonna be super quick, I don't have a ton to report. Just that, generally over the last month, I've been just enjoying time with some family, and I've been at the farmer's market and Corner Spot, and I was at the ABA networking event that, last night. I just want to encourage people that are listening that, the ABA's got a great website with a directory of all Ashland businesses, and so if there's someone that you're, a service that you're looking for, check there before you kind of go out of town, see if there's somebody in town whose services you can use. Just, it's a great resource and great people. And then other than that, I'm sure Steve will talk about this weekend in Dragonfly, so.
Well, that's good comments about the ABA, so, think globally, but shop locally. So I have a handful of things here. One, we talked a couple meetings ago about having a legal update, Michael, so we need to get that set up at some point.
You don't mean a
to-
legal update, you mean like an open meeting law
I'm talking
training?
about a
Yeah.
legal workshop.
Yeah.
So,
Oh,
open
and the
meeting
open-
law and public records, and just kind of get, kind of revisit that and get everybody, because we've made mistakes here, and other boards and committees make mistakes as well, so we need to certainly clean that up. We are going to start in the 2 October meetings. We're taking 8 committees that we appoint, and we're gonna split them up 4 and 4 in the 2 meetings. We're gonna ask them to come and do a 10-15-minute presentation update on
Good.
what they're doing and what their plans are and all that good stuff. One of the things, though, that I wanna just plant the seed is relative to, and I was teasing Skip earlier about stormwater, but I've had several conversations with both residents and businesses regarding the stormwater fees and the way they're structured. And I think they're valid concerns. I think we need to dig into it. We need to ask the Stormwater Committee to go and review and look at what other towns do. And I'm speaking more to kind of an abatement program, something that is based on certain conditions. And I'm not talking about senior abatements.
No, I
I'm talking
understand.
about business or property abatements, that makes sense, so.
If it, if it's completely open space, there's,
Right, so.
where's the issue, yeah.
So I think that's one of the things we need to discuss with the Stormwater Committee when they come in and start that process.
But do you wanna just kinda give them, I mean, just request that they start the process, or before they don't necessarily need to come in here, do they?
They're gonna give us an update.
Okay.
They're one of the committees that's gonna.
No,
come
I
in.
understand,
Yeah.
but maybe we just, before they come in, say,
Start
can you
looking
guys
at it.
start this process?
We can, I mean, there's nothing to prevent us from
Yeah.
having that.
I mean, just that when they come in,
conversation,
they
but
can,
yeah,
we can have a
yeah.
better,
Sure.
maybe.
Next item I have is, I mentioned the last meeting before about the whole Federal Communication Commission ruling and its impact on local cable and so on. Joe, were you able to meet with Barbara?
Barbara, we've been playing telephone tag,
Okay.
but I left her an email for her to get a hold of me and we
Yeah.
could sit down.
I met with her today
Okay.
and, went over, I think there's I don't think any of us really understand the implications and so on of what this has, because it's kind of two levels of impacts. And the way I understood it today was the first vote, which goes into effect on September 26th, probably is not gonna have a major impact on WACA-TV. The next vote may. So there's gonna be implications, and the suggestion is for WACA to come in, have Barbara, have members of her board come in and kind of
Give a
give the
presentation.
layout of the landscape of what they potentially are dealing with. And, some of the options, I don't think any of us are prepared to talk about the solutions to this tonight, but there's gonna be impacts. So, and I think because it's September 26th when it actually goes into effect, what happens is that there's a period of time that the cable station and the cable provider will go and revisit their relationship in a sense. So Barbara and I, when we talked today, we agreed to maybe our first meeting in November to have them come in, because then there'll be some time frame there and they'll have a better idea.
How does that affect the contract negotiations? We're currently under contract with these providers. We have a collective bargaining agreement with these folks in so many ways, and if it's like a 2-year or 3-year
So
contract, how does that affect it?
it does impact, it impacts the existing contracts.
It does?
It does.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's what this kind of period is between when it goes into effect,
All right.
and because there may be costs that the cable, whether it's Verizon or Comcast, is gonna say, well, we're no longer obligated to assume these.
I'm sure that the consumer themselves will not see a decrease in their monthly payments as a result of it, even though they're saving money themselves.
Yeah.
We won't see
And I
that.
don't know, I certainly can't speak to the whole business model of local cable and how that's changed over time and so on. But, I think there's lots of implications here, so. Yolanda?
So just something real quick, so I'm on a policy committee for MMA, and we have a meeting next week. And one of the things we're gonna be looking at is mass access, which is local cable access, lobbying group has presented something that they're gonna look, it's called an act relative to digital entertainment on public rights of way. So we're gonna be reviewing that, and it sounds like it's gonna be something we're gonna be presenting then to the legislature to look at. So to sort of help combat some of the loss of fees, there might be other fees that they're looking to implement. So I will, once I have that information, I
That's
will
good.
update you at our next meeting
Good.
that I'm at.
Okay, just wanted to make comment on CPA increases that have been approved or have been built into the state budget, and CPA Community Preservation Act monies where we've been CPA community for many years. We surcharge ourselves at 3%. But the fiscal 2020 state budget includes a permanent increase in recording fees at county registries of deeds. So that's where that matching money comes from, the registry of deeds. And it's projected to raise an additional $36 million per year for the trust fund. Now, the increase is expected to roughly double the state matching funds. This past round, I think, was 17 or 18%, so that's a nice little bump if that's.
Yeah. How much is going to Boston? Because didn't
I
Boston,
no idea what.
because there was a lot of.
But they just passed it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And there was a concern that would
That's
essentially
gonna
break
eat
the
up,
bank.
is that right? So there is, you know, it's interesting, I thought there were more communities participating, it's 175 CPA cities and towns, so, at a 351. So that's a nice
And-
bit of
and
additional.
Because we do 3%, when they go to those second rounds, we're looked at more favorably than communities
We
who
go
don't do
through second,
3%.
third
Yeah.
rounds,
Yeah.
so. The Dragonfly Festival is scheduled for this Saturday, the 7th. We did modify our hours from, we had originally scheduled 1 to 7 because of the Triple E scenario. We adjusted from 12 to 6. The two sites, the Ashland Historical Society grounds and the Corner Spot, got a great lineup. We've got the James Montgomery Band. We've got a great musician and educator from Framingham, Eggy Castrillo, who's a percussionist himself. He's an instructor at Berkeley College, and he's bringing his salsa band. But we've got stuff for kids. We've got great food vendors, so it's going to be a good time. So, looking forward to it. So
Is there a
that-
schedule anywhere of who's performing
They're
when?
all posted. Brandy's been
I'm on Facebook.
Okay.
been
I'm on
posting
Facebook.
all
It's
of
on
that
Facebook.
stuff.
So
So
the
she's been
Dragonfly
doing a great
Festival-
job.
Oh, thanks. The Dragonfly Festival has its own Facebook page, so that's.
And
been
we
good.
have a website as
Yep,
well,
and the
so
website.
everything's posted there. So
I'll be
And
sending you
thank you
something.
thank you to all of our sponsors, because we've got some great businesses and
Yeah.
community groups that have supported the Dragonfly Festival.
So again,
so.
it further, reinforces the whole shop locally concept,
Mhm.
right? So the last thing I wanted to just comment on is that, I believe that this board is been, very receptive and respectful to residents that want to come and speak. We open up, we're not obligated to open it up as just an open discussion, but we do open it up for discussion depending on the topic. So I really feel that we're respectful, we give people an opportunity to do so. I think the only thing that I ask is that respect is given back as well. I think there's a situation occurred tonight that doesn't sit well with me. We gave plenty of opportunities for people to come up and to address the board. It wasn't necessary for an individual, a resident, to be angry and to come up to the table and act in a disrespectful manner. So I just needed to get that off my chest.
Could I also just pipe in one additional thing, just to remind people out there that the Ashland Facebook Bulletin Board is it's a forum to talk and it's a forum to communicate, but it's not an official format to get a response from the town. So that's not a channel mechanism to get an official response. So.
Because we as board members, we can certainly read it, but we should not be, unless it's straight fact, we can't be putting our opinion on there.
Right.
And I would, to just follow that up, if you have an issue, come to a selectman meeting.
Right.
Participate as citizens,
Or send emails.
Or send
Or
emails.
send an email.
Or pick up a phone,
call.
we're all in the book,
Call,
and I think we're all
or
willing to
whatever.
take a
I mean,
phone
I
call.
think, I think that's a good point, and I think that really is gonna be part of your process with our board policies and procedures when, you know, when we get to dig into that. Because social media policy is gonna be an integral part to that, so.
And I think people do think that they put something up on Facebook and they expect like an official response to things, and that's just not, it's just not sort of the mechanism for that.
Yeah.
So, just to remind people, we, you know.
But we all, many of us, you know, post information there or
Oh,
say
absolutely.
things.
Yeah,
There's nothing wrong with
absolutely,
that. No,
absolutely.
you know.
Yeah.
It's
So
just that
we-
people shouldn't, you know, we are elected officials, when we say something, we're speaking for ourselves.
Right, but
and
we do
hopefully it's
have to be
correct.
careful, because like on the Ashland bulletin board, I believe we're all part of that bulletin board.
Yeah.
If you post your opinion, it could be an open meeting law violation,
I
because
find
we're
that-
all on it.
If
I
two
find
or
that
more
hard
If it's
to-
something,
yeah.
if it's something we're gonna be
We should check it in. I find that
Yeah,
hard to believe
I
that a
find that hard to
public
believe as
official
well,
can't
but we'll
give
dig
us
into
opinion.
that, and
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll come up with a policy that makes sense
But
and
it
works.
is, you know,
but,
it is a good place for information,
yeah.
but if people think they're getting something, this is the way to officially ask for something.
Plus, the other thing, we are all out in the community all the time. We don't, you know, we're actively engaged in different events in town. We go to various other meetings. We support local businesses. We're, you know, so there's, you know, really no excuse for not being able to communicate with us in a more direct fashion.
Absolutely.
So,
I agree with you.
that being said,
Was there something else Skip wanted to?
I don't think so.
No,
I think
you're
he
good?
was agreeing with me, all of my
Okay.
comments.
I have a lot of other comments, but I will refrain.
Okay, just checking, because you've been sitting here very nicely all night and.
He was shaking his head in the affirmative. So,
I think so.
that being said,
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank
Good
you
night.
and good night.